People who worked in restaurants, what was the worst customer that you had to deal with? Worked in a popular restaurant for a while. We usually have quite a long wait, 30 to 40-minute waits, during dinner service, and people are told by the hosts about this. There was this lady that got fed up with the wait after 10 minutes. She stormed into the restaurant, stood next to a table of 4 people, and literally asked them, "Are you guys done? We've been waiting for a long time now, and we would like to have the table if you guys are just chatting." It was completely mind-blown how people are able to not give a F and pull something like this in public. Story 2. A customer ordered one of our daily specials and didn't like it. So instead of complaining to me about the food and letting me offer something else, she complained to my manager about me. This was May of last year. In August of last year, turns out she was one of my college professors for the semester, teaching a management course. She recognized me the first day, but I played it off like I didn't know her. Edit. She didn't complain about me to my manager in front of me. I left to go work an event in a different building, and she left a sticky note for me after talking to my boss. I don't know what the sticky note said since I didn't bother to read it. Story 3. I got my worst review. It was also this establishment's worst piece of customer feedback from a woman who my hard-ass boss and co-boss agreed I had welcomed warmly and who I had served appropriately and politely. This customer accused me of being terrible and rude and swearing at her because, get this, I held up 2 fingers to illustrate that we had 2 cup sizes. She also said that I'd been consistently rude for over a month and was the reason she was never coming back. Only I'd actually transferred from a different store and it was actually my second day working there. So I guess she had no way of knowing. I just want to know what the hell her issue was. I thought I was friendly to her. I don't understand why she'd go out of her way to try and get a minimum wage worker fired. Story 4. Way back in the 80s, I worked in a restaurant that was a favorite of a celebrity chef of those days, Jeff Smith, the frugal gourmet. Never seen a bigger asshat than that guy. Literally make our servers cry. Nothing was ever right. He was beyond rude and condescending, yet he kept coming back. He had a reputation of being a jerk off camera. Eventually, he was disgraced by being outed as a child predator and was quickly forgotten by all. Our restaurant was a good place. Another celebrity chef of the time, Graham Kerr, the galloping gourmet, was always a pleasure to have visit. Story 5. After a wedding reception ended at our facility, we were cleaning and I began the cleaning process on our espresso machine. The party was over almost a half hour already. The process takes 12 minutes. People were still there as the party slowly let out and the father of the bride asked me for an espresso. I told him I could get it to him, as we have a strict policy of always trying to satisfy a guest's needs, but the machine was cleaning and it would be done in about 10 minutes. He begins ranting about how much he paid for the wedding and stormed to our banquet's manager and told them I refused to make it for him. Manager is a D-bag and starts ripping me in front of the guy. I show both of them that the machine is just finishing the cleaning process and it was impossible to make it beforehand. I got suspended for 2 weeks. You know, it's not uncommon. In fact, I would go so far as to say that it is common for, let's just call them paying customers at restaurants to just adopt this pretentious attitude like they own the servers and the waiters and the staff there because they're paying for a meal and therefore they're in charge, they're calling the shots, right? We see this all the time. But what's really aggravating about this story, as employees back there in the kitchen and actually working there, you got to have each other's backs. There's nothing more unsettling than seeing a manager that doesn't support their employees and then has the nerve to suspend OP for this. I mean, I'm assuming that everything that was shared in the post is exactly how it went down. It just doesn't make any sense. That's terrible. Story 6. Work in a place that's frequented by local families and youth sports teams. On Sundays, this one large group of people always come in and they're the worst. The parents drink and ignore their pre-teens who run around playing games in the entire restaurant, disrupting everyone else. They've tried to walk in a party of 45 during end-of-year sports party season when we're booked solid, and get mad that there isn't enough space for them. And they modify everything like crazy and leave 0 in a tip. It's at least once a month the entire group comes in, and weekly for some of the individual families. Story 7. I worked at Friendly's in high school as a server, and this brings back so many painful memories. Worked my ass off all night once for a whole soccer team and parents who came in with no notice. Then, at the end of the night, they wanted everything split up. The kids were sitting at different tables, so trying to get the right kid's food to the right parent was near impossible. Not to mention, some kids split meals or got specialty drinks and ice cream or appetizers. Some parents were trying to tell me what their kid ordered, others were just saying, whatever the blonde kid with the headband ordered, etc. It was impossible to work out who got what and who was supposed to be charged with it. Not to mention, about half of them had coupons that they were all switching around with each other, some of which were expired. But they wanted them used anyway because they were spending so much money. A huge portion of the bill had to be comped because no one would claim a bunch of items, and I didn't think to tell them beforehand they couldn't split the bill 17 ways. After reprinting checks about 10 times because, God forbid, someone pay an extra $2 on a milkshake they said their kid didn't order, even though you could look over at the table and see half the kids had milkshakes, I was in the back crying. My manager was yelling at me over what a fiasco this was and mad because the kids had been drawing on the tables and throwing crayons at other customers over the partition. I finally come back out to hopefully get everyone change or swipe cards or whatever, and one of the dads had the audacity to tell me to, quote, not look so stressed out, it's just Friendly's. F you, whoever that guy was. They then left me about a $15 tip in total for the 3-ish hours I waited on them with a bill that was easily over $400. A lot of them tipped on the coupon price instead of the actual cost, and a lot of them just left whatever change was left over. I know it's only Friendly's, and I might have been young, but that doesn't make the job any easier. F those people. Story 8. This one guy who basically hated his order so much that he waved me over and told me to put my hand out, and proceeded to spit out entirely what was in his mouth into my hand, then tell me to refund him and then make him something else. So I would have been fired on that day. I would have taken what he just spat in my hand and smashed it right back in his face. To people that act like this, and I know that there really are people that do this, you suck and you deserve to starve. Or eat prison food. Prison food probably tastes better than whatever this guy spat back out. Sorry you had to go through that, OP. Story 9. I waited tables for a few years in college, and the worst table that I ever had was a Catholic priest and some guy he was trying to hit up for donations. The whole meal, he was very condescending and demanding. After everything was done, I left the check at the table. He ended up walking out, stiffing me not just on the tip, but on the entire check. He even stole the leather check holder thing. I reported this to my manager. A couple weeks later, this same guy comes in with about 20 members of his congregation. My manager told him he wasn't welcome in our restaurant after walking out on his previous tab in front of his whole party. They all ended up leaving to go elsewhere. Best manager I've ever had. So in contrast to the story that I commented on a few stories ago about managers not having their employees' backs, this manager, is awesome. Like, believe your employees when they say that customers are being D-bags. Have their backs, and then if you have a chance to, take a shot back at them and, spin the karma back, in their face, do it. That's awesome. That makes for much better reading. Moving on. Story 10. Not a restaurant employee, but I had an a-hole at my moving job. He gave us $20 halfway through the job because we were good, but said, if you don't keep up the good work, I will take it back. Jerk off. Adding to this, as it seems popular, first guy was a late 20s grade A douche. Another guy was this short 45-ish powerlifter that was a stereotypical short man. Think of guys that call people chief sarcastically, and an a-hole to boot. Sometimes customers had water or Gatorade for us, and it was always appreciated. We were touring this guy's house, and as we walked into the kitchen, he announced he had water for us. Oh, awesome, thanks, I said as I surveyed what needed to be moved. The MF pointed down to his dog's water bowl. Yeah, F that dude. Same dude also had a plethora of weight/workout junk, which was fine. Movers are essentially powerlifters. But I saw him push what looked to be a bowling ball into the front lawn. I went to pick it up, thinking it was a bowling ball, but no, it was a 150-pound cast iron ball bearing from a ship's engine. He could have left it on the pavement, but where's the fun in that? Let it sink into the ground, where I had to dig it out and lift it onto a 4.5-foot truck bed. Love that thing for grip strength, exclaimed the a-hole. Story 11. I had a guy that was a germaphobe and had really bad OCD. He came through before and my coworker didn't want to deal with him, so I went to the drive-through window after washing my hands. I cashed out the order that was on screen and he reluctantly handed over his card. I gave him the coffee that I cashed him out for. He started yelling at me, saying that it was wrong. Apparently, the person that took the order forgot to type it in. Unfortunate, but it happens. He started yelling at the coworker that didn't want to take his order at the window. So instead of just saying that it was the wrong order, getting refunded and being on his way, he stayed in the driveway for 20 minutes telling my coworker that she was stupid and unprofessional and was unfit to be a supervisor. He kept demanding that we get the phone number of our franchise owner. But apparently the number was wrong and he kept yelling at us. But when we came back to the window after 20 minutes of this, he left. My supervisor went into the back to cry. I felt so bad for her. She's a sweet person. Fast forward less than a month later, he called the store to apologize and the manager made sure that my coworker never dealt with him again, but he could come in as long as he didn't make a scene. He told the manager that his therapist told him he should apologize. He spent a combined total of 3 hours on the phone with the manager, where he apologized and also blamed us for making him late to his appointment that day. At the end of the phone call, he asked if we were hiring. Yeah, nice little plot twist there at the end. Yeah, I know I've been like a mega douchebag and you all probably hate me, but are you guys hiring? Can I come work with you? Yeah, that would end well, I'm sure. Story 12. Used to be a bartender at this hybrid restaurant/bar/movie theater. On big movie releases, the bar would get absolutely slammed, and on this particular night, we had run out of glassware completely. People were allowed to take their drinks into the theater with them. The only glassware I had at the time were regular pint glasses that you would normally serve water in. We only served beer in them in a pinch. This guy and his wife/GF got lucky and caught a seat at the bar, and he ordered a Jack Daniels neat. Having no other glassware, I put it in a pint glass and explained that we were running low on rocks glasses, assuming he would understand since it was absolute chaos everywhere you looked. He took it and said, "I'm not very happy," in a smarmy way and gave this crappy little grin. I apologized again and said, "Unfortunately, we're not making any more glasses back here." And him and his wife acted like I reached across the bar and slapped them. I just got my manager and told him to deal with them. He told them the same thing I had told them regarding the lack of glassware and gave them a free drink, which they seemed happy with. I would have felt bad if there was something else I could have done for them, but there wasn't, so F that guy. Story 13. Had a man and his wife come in during a really busy lunch rush. He was rude off the bat, interrupting me, not wanting to listen to me speak, whatever. It happens all the time. He was very adamant that he wanted both chips and salsa and a plate of roasted wings as appetizers. He kept emphasizing that he wanted them together before they ordered their lunch, even though chips and salsa only take a minute and wings take about 12. I rang them in together because of how he ordered them. In hindsight, I should have made completely sure, but not 3 minutes later, the man is waving at my coworker across the restaurant, yelling at her about how they've been there for 30 minutes and his appetizer's taking too long, and he wants it before his wings. I was at a party table, so he ran back and grabbed the chips and the wings, which were somehow up as well, and brought them out. He took one bite of a wing and tossed the plate like a frisbee across the table towards her and started complaining about them being cold. I rush over to see what's going on and he starts yelling at me, saying his food is awful and this is the worst service he's ever gotten in his life. I don't do well with grown men yelling at me, so I went to the kitchen and my manager went out and thankfully had my back as much as he could and made the guy pay for the wings and chips and then leave. After that, I started to clean the table where I found the single penny he tipped me with that my coworker promptly threw in the trash and got a call from my general manager asking why a man had called me, quote, professionally challenged on Yelp. Story 14. There was an old couple I loved who used to come in every single week to the restaurant I worked at. They were super nice and clearly still very much in love. I'd always kind of thought of them almost like role models of how I'd like to be in my retirement. They lived a couple towns over in a picturesque place and would always have nice stories about what they'd been up to. The guy spoke like Ray Winston, which made him cool as F in my eyes. Serving them always made the shift better. Anyway, one day we were doing a charity thing for World Hunger Day, specifically for children in Africa, and there were relevant pictures of starving kids on the flyer we gave with the bill. It was one of those tick here if you want to add 25p or something things. It was a bit cringe, but most customers were like, whatever, it's only 25p. So anyway, I take over the bill and the guy totally blindsides me with his response. I ain't giving no money to some effing I was caught off guard and stood in silence as he went into a massive racist rant. I'd totally never expected that. I'd seen these guys as people to aspire to, and turns out they were massive bigots. I was gutted. Story 15. A lady from the real estate agency next door ordered a chicken box, and then proceeded to drive an hour to her next showing. In the middle of summer, where it probably sat right in front of her AC unit in the passenger seat. Surprise, surprise, food gets cold when left in the cold. Who knew? Upon the shocking discovery that food doesn't stay warm, she called us to scream at my boss that we tried to kill her. Because he's a spineless pushover in the summer, he agreed to give her a new free meal when she came back. She came to get her free food, and things didn't improve. One of our chefs came to collect her cold food. While still in front of the window, he opened the box and fished out the uneaten biscuit. He threw the rest away, but walked away with the bread. I presume he meant to eat it, but he went about it all wrong. She started screaming about how we were recycling food, that she was good friends with the health inspector, that she was going to see us in court. The histrionics brought my boss out of his office, and after chewing out the idiot chef, he tried to smooth things over. I don't remember much. We were all effing busy, and since he'd taken over the drive-thru, I hopped onto another task. She wouldn't move forward, and the line was piling up. My boss was starting to get annoyed. They had stopped talking to each other. Her hot, fresh meal is up, and he goes to hand deliver it and tell her to get the F out of line. I'm not entirely sure, as I was halfway across the store trying to make drinks. All I remember is a surprised gasp from our food runner, and looking up to see a box of steaming hot chicken came sailing through the window and scatter across the front of the house. My boss had barely stepped back in time. We could only stare as the crazy lady roared out of the parking lot, and he snapped at the first person stupid enough to still be making eye contact to clean it up. Story 16. I worked at a Vietnamese restaurant back in high school, and I had a Viet family come in to eat. They gave me snobby vibes the entire time, especially after I told them I couldn't speak Vietnamese. They ordered regular pho, but asked for no cilantro, so I rang the order in with no cilantro. It came out with cilantro in it, and I told the kitchen what the family asked. The kitchen told me they couldn't do anything about it, so I told my manager, and they told me to ask the family if they still wanted it. Family said yes, so I brought it out, and they took out the cilantro and ate the entire thing. At the end of the meal, they spoke to the owner and complained how I got their order completely wrong, got the food for free, and got their bill taken out of my pay. The owner told me I should have removed the cilantro myself. Crappy management, crappy customer. Edit. I was not angry that the customer ordered no cilantro. I was upset at the fact that they abused their rights by asking not to pay for their food when they clearly ate everything. Also, it's been a few years. Haha. Story 17. Not me, but I heard about my dad's former coworker being an absolute a-hole to a waitress. He'd only started working in my dad's department, IT, a few months earlier, and my dad did not like him from the start. This guy accompanied my dad on a business trip to Australia a couple of years back, and they went to a nice restaurant one evening. This guy proceeded to tell the waitress the food was horrible, then just resorted to personally insulting the waitress, which made her cry, on top of refusing to tip her. My dad immediately thought, this guy is a complete a-hole. That same guy, a few weeks later, also tried to get my dad fired, so he could get my dad's position as head of IT. My dad confessed to me that he was thinking of leaving that company anyway, but that guy made him GTFO. Thankfully, he's well known in his industry. He's the type of guy that could resign at a job on Friday afternoon and start a new one on Monday morning, so to speak. So my dad submitted his resignation and immediately got a job elsewhere. Unfortunately, the guy did get my dad's job, but lots of people in the IT department jumped ship to the company my dad was working at. As a result, the a-hole who had taken my dad's job ironically got fired a year later because nobody wanted to work for him. Edit. Okay, I'm getting a lot of responses about tipping in Australia. My dad was not aware you guys don't tip. He always tips everywhere he goes. Hope that clears it up. Story 18. I worked at a bakery for 2 years, and I had to deal with, honestly, the most heinous and rude customers ever. I've worked in the food industry my whole life, and lived in Toronto up until 3 years ago, and I've never dealt with such entitlement. Anyways, one day, one of our staff members quit by text message 5 minutes before her shift, and 30 minutes before we were set to open at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. We were hard-pressed finding someone to cover, so I was alone until a front-of-house person was able to come in. About an hour later, I had one of the kitchen staff helping me, and all they could do was grab things and bag them as they weren't trained on cash or coffee. So here I am, running around trying to help customers, make coffees, ring people through, and clearly stressed. This douchebag man was clearly annoyed that he had to wait, huffing and puffing, and eventually loudly exclaimed, "F this, I'm not effing waiting for this crap," and proceeded to throw his bagged muffin at my head and storm out. I legit almost chased him down. I was livid. Customers are crap, lol. So, as corny as this sounds, throwing a muffin at somebody is still technically considered assault, so you were well within your rights there to go after him or at least call the police on him. You know, some of them muffins be stale, hard as a rock. You could get hurt by that. Moving on. Story 19. Oh, where to start? I worked in a cafe for a few years, and while there were some bad one-offs, the worst people were difficult regulars. There was one who would order the most popular thing on the menu, but with a list of modifications a mile long, right down to what fruit to include with the side of fruit and how many inches tall to pile the turkey on the sandwich. She would always get it to go and then would about 50% of the time call the restaurant from home saying that the order wasn't correct and that she wanted a refund. However, my least favorite was this woman who would come in about an hour before closing and then stay until past closing, bugging you for little things piecemeal all the while. I get that at sit-down restaurants, customers can generally come in whenever they want as long as the doors aren't locked yet, and then stay as long as they want. However, we were in a small cafe, and I would kick everyone out when I locked the doors. She just wouldn't leave. Once she was on the phone when it was time for her to leave, lol. I ended up just shouting at her, loud enough for whoever was on the other line to hear, "It's time to leave the cafe now!" People not wanting to leave was relatively common, although most people would leave right away when you asked. Once a woman just wanted to finish up one more thing on her computer. One more thing turned into one more thing, which turned into one more thing. She was sitting by the open window and there was no air conditioning in the cafe. So finally, I just went and closed the window. She gave me the dirtiest look, but she got the F out, lol. The first customer that I described was my coworker's worst nightmare, and he always made me deal with her since, while she was super annoying, I didn't mind as much. The people who wouldn't leave at the end of the day pissed me off so badly, though. Look, we've all been there. To me, there's really nothing more rude than people that press employees around closing time. The common courtesy as a customer is to be done doing whatever you're doing and leaving the building 5 minutes before official closing time. But technically, once you hit that actual hour of closing time, 8 o'clock, 12 o'clock, whatever it is, you absolutely need to be out at that point. So if you're not going to be courteous, then the absolute least that you can do is leave promptly at the closing hour. And people that linger, hang around, it's just so tacky and inconsiderate. Story 20. I used to manage a restaurant and hated those couple of times in 5 years of my working there when some entitled customers left without paying because the waitresses didn't come to pick up my money. That's a piece of crap move and a poor excuse, when all you need is to grab a waitress's attention by simply talking. Once it was a family of 4 who left the restaurant during a busy evening, and we realized that the bill wasn't paid for after some 10 minutes had passed. I checked the cameras and saw the father taking the bill, putting the money in, sitting there for just 3 to 4 minutes, looking around and taking the money back, and leaving with the whole family. Lucky our owner was a great guy and told me to simply ban the effer and his family. And to my surprise, that piece of crap came back with friends on a busy evening in a couple of months. I was very excited watching his face being embarrassed in front of his friends and customers sitting outside when I told him that he's banned, and when his wife started to get upset, I told them I remembered them and told them the whole story with me checking the cameras and seeing him taking the money back and all. Story 21. I worked in a Japanese restaurant and it was a small restaurant, so I was usually working as cashier, waiter, busboy, and delivery driver. Basically, it was me handling everything and the owner would come out from the back and take over if there was a delivery. Anyway, one day we had a family come in. Mom and Dad got sushi rolls for themselves and then got chicken hibachis for the kids. The hibachi came with a side of rice, and I watched as these kids started throwing rice at each other. Mom and Dad did absolutely nothing to stop them, like not even a cut that out. When they left the place, all around their table was an absolute mess, and to make things worse, the floor was carpeted, so cleaning rice out of it was a huge pain in the ass normally. But this was on a whole different level. Didn't even get a sorry about the mess from them. Story 22. Worked fast food in high school. I've got a few. 1. Man orders double cheeseburger with extra cheese and receives one with 4 slices instead of the usual 2. 2 minutes later, he's absolutely red in the face and screaming at the poor cashier. He's demanding to talk to the little crap that made his sandwich and asking if we think this is some kind of a joke. Apparently, when he ordered extra cheese, he wanted 1 extra slice, not 2. 2. Some guy comes to the drive-thru and orders 4 fish sandwiches. We only had 2 pieces of fish cooked, and they were really close to their hold expiration time. Since we had to cook more anyway, my manager said to waste those 2 since they were old and make all fresh ones for the customer. Guy comes up to the window and they ask him to pull forward because it'll be a couple minutes. Meanwhile, we keep serving other cars. After a couple orders go out, this dude is in the lobby and asking for a manager. He's irate that we made him wait on his food while serving other people. The manager apologizes and explains the situation. Most people would be thrilled we didn't serve them old food, but for some reason that just made this guy angrier. He starts yelling louder and then threatens my manager with physical violence over it. She asks him to leave and threatens to call the police. Dude storms out, slamming the door so hard he broke the latch, and squeals his tires as he leaves the parking lot. Without his order. Never came back for it either. 3. We had this regular who came in every Sunday morning and ordered the same thing. A side salad, supersized fries, and a Happy Meal for her grandkid. One day, the person who bagged her order put the salad and the fries in the same bag as we were trained to do. If you've ever seen a supersized fry container, they're tall, and the side salad is in one of those little rectangular plastic things. So, as you can imagine, the fries fell over. For a normal person, this is no big deal, but not for this lady. She needed new fries and a new salad, in separate bags this time. Of course, the fries we had already made that came up 1 minute ago were not good enough, and she refused to leave or accept the new ones until we made a fresh basket. Story 23. It was my first week as a waitress at a Perkins. 2 old ladies came in 2 hours before the end of my night shift. They ordered the turkey specials, which came with soup, the meal, and dessert. I got their food and checked up on them. Everything was fine, but they were still eating. I came back 15 minutes later to check up again. One woman was finished, so I took her plate, but the other wasn't, so I left her to it. I came by again 10 minutes later and asked, "Still eating?" The centerpieces in the middle of the table were positioned in such a way that I didn't notice the fork in her hand. She responded very rudely, "Obviously I am. What does it look like?" I was new at this, so I was taken aback. I apologized and laughed it off nervously. At this point, however, the kitchen was 10 minutes to closing, and I needed to put in their dessert order so the staff would know what items to not clean up and put away. So I asked the woman if I could take their dessert orders, and the same woman looked at me angrily and said, "Do not rush us. We come here every week, and we've never experienced such poor service. There's no need for you to be hovering like this." I suppose I was hovering, but they were taking forever. I apologized and explained the kitchen was closing soon, but she wouldn't have it and sent me on my way. By the way, as all this happens, the other lady sat there awkwardly, not saying a thing, although as I walked away, I heard her tell her friend she shouldn't have yelled at me like that. I went back to the kitchen and talked trash with the other waitresses, but as I did, I noticed my boss walking to their table. Oh, great. So they're chatting now, and she's not even finishing her food. So a half hour passes, and the kitchen is closed, and the restaurant's about to close too. But there they are, still chatting. When they were finally done, I went and asked if I could take their dessert order. And guess what? They ordered something that needed to be prepared by the kitchen, as well as coffee for the table. Well, the coffee machine had already been cleaned, which was a whole process, and the kitchen staff was gone. I told them that, and the one rude woman insisted I ask my boss to reopen the kitchen because he knew them and they were regulars. Having no choice, I asked him, and he reluctantly did it. We made a whole new batch of coffee, and he whipped up their order in the kitchen. They got a ton of free coffee because we had nothing to do with the leftover. I had to stay an hour and a half late while my ride waited in the parking lot so I could re-clean the kitchen by myself. Then I got yelled at by my boss for not taking their dessert order earlier, and he gave me no chance to explain myself. To top it all off, when I left, I got a measly $8 tip on a $75 bill. Worst day ever. Story 24. I used to work in Park City, where they have the Sundance Film Festival. So you have a bunch of high-maintenance, pern-snickety people from the film industry in what is otherwise a pretty chill ski town in Utah. Just the absolute gall people have in customizing their order is enough to drive you crazy. I hope every line cook in every restaurant in Los Angeles makes $1 million. Here are some of the ones I remember. A latte, half almond milk, half cream, mixed, extra hot, with a small spurt of honey on the bottom. A black bean burger put in a spinach tortilla with the tomatoes chopped, not sliced. A breakfast burrito, but make it vegan. We had vegan options on the menu. The burrito wasn't one of them. I guess nobody from LA eats gluten, so I got a bunch of free croissants, so it wasn't a total loss. Look, OP, I live in LA and I eat gluten. Don't group us all together with those pretentious jerk-offs that you've got to deal with. We're not all bad, I promise. Story 25. Used to wait tables a while back. Breakfast place. Mother's Day was always the worst to work in restaurants, as I'm sure anyone else can agree with. So this Mother's Day is going particularly well, and then towards the end of the brunch rush, I get sat with a party of 8. Everyone's in a good mood. Mom, it's her day, orders our breakfast tacos with no onions. She says no onions like 3 times. Right, no onions. Drinks are going fine, everyone is doing well. Food comes out, I ask how everything looks. Mom pushes her plate away and loudly and aggressively says, "I said no onions!" I look down at the tacos to see that there are, in fact, no onions. Me, "Ma'am, I put your order in with no onions. There are no onions." She gets a crap-eating grin and goes, "Oh yeah? Well, what are these?" and points to the green bell peppers on the tacos. Me, those are green bell peppers. She rolls her eyes and goes, "Same thing." The table goes silent as no one in her party knows what to do, clearly blinded by her stupidity. My brain short-circuits. I think to myself, no, the F they aren't the same thing. They're not even the same effing color. You can read, you're a effing adult. Just say how you want something and stop making a scene. Instead, I just put on my best customer service smile and said, "Right, sorry about that. We'll get that fixed." Took it back to the kitchen and told my chef, and he just started laughing about it. $0 tip. Happy Mother's Day. Story 26. I have 2 from the same restaurant. First one goes like this. I worked as a busboy, and it was getting near closing time. At this point, it was around 9:30. We closed at 10. And this table, who was probably 20-ish feet away from where I was, started trying to say to me, "That's a free meal." I stopped vacuuming because I just didn't understand what they were asking me. Supposedly, they were under the belief that if someone was vacuuming before close, then they got a free meal. So eventually, the owner comes up to me and asks me how far away I was vacuuming, and I said the same thing. She just told me, "Yeah, they're idiots," and told me to wait a little bit. They ended up leaving past 10:30, and I don't think they left a tip. They didn't get their free meal. Another shorter story was the time that 2 giant groups of about 16 people each came in a few weeks later at about 9:45. I think I got home at midnight that night. Story 27. Back in college, I was working my first job as a front-of-house staff for an on-campus, locally owned burger place. My main job was to call the order numbers out to customers and pass their food off. Easy enough. Well, one night, we get absolutely slammed with to-go orders at close. I'm the only person out at the front, and there were 2 cooks behind me working on the food. A man ordered 2 burgers. Cool. Well, we're so busy, I'm obviously not aware of what number goes with what customer off the top of my head, and I call out a number. A customer takes it and heads out. Turns out, the wrong customer grabbed that man's order. He proceeded to yell profanities at me, calling me a effing idiot, demanding his food be free, and he gets free fries, all in front of other customers. I started crying. It held up everyone else's food in the process. The manager has to tell him to F off and remakes his food. It was just one giant crap show. Story 28. Pizza, ice cream, sandwich shop in a small rural town. I was on delivery. We had this guy who ordered maybe once a week or so. This customer lived a solid half an hour outside town. None of us knew why the owner ever agreed to deliver to this guy in the first place, being that far out, but we used to wonder if the owner was being threatened into it. The level of crap the customer would raise if you didn't bring him cheese and peppers for his pizza was absolute madness. There was an incident where a delivery driver found the customer waiting on his porch, polishing a shotgun, and the first thing the customer did was loosely point the gun towards the driver and say, "Did you bring my cheese and peppers?" We fully believed the customer would have shot our driver if the answer had been no. As it was, the driver didn't have as much cheese and peppers as the customer would have liked. Customer called the restaurant and threw a fit. From then on, when we delivered to this customer, because the owner didn't cut him off, we were told to take a bucket of cheese and peppers with us. I'm talking like one of those bulk ice cream buckets you buy at the supermarket. We all kept on in our trucks, but we had to start taking an extra just for this one customer. I wonder if the guy was even in it for the pizza. Look, if a guy's pointing a shotgun at you, you don't have to wait for your boss or your employer to cut them off. Like, take matters into your own hands and call the police. And that's especially if you, as OP quoted here, fully believe the customer would have shot our driver if the answer had been no. Like, if you truly feel like your life is in danger, and I mean, no job is worth that. Call the cops. Don't wait on your job. Story 29. Not necessarily the worst crime here, but there was a group of old ladies that would come in every Sunday after church. All four would get the same thing, every week. Iced tea with a half-grilled Asian salad with the senior discount. $4.19. Every time they paid with $4 bills and 2 dimes. The tip? 4 cents. While this sucked enough on its own, the fact that they were always super sweet to everyone made it burn even more. But on top of all that, on Sunday morning/afternoon, a really busy shift, they would sit there for several hours. So on a busy day, when you only had 3 or 4 tables, having one of the tables taken for hours with a guaranteed 4-cent tip really sucked for your income for the day. Also worked at a fast food restaurant in high school. We closed at 9 on Sundays. Almost every Sunday, a group from a local church would roll in at about 8:55 and order full meals, full desserts, and then sit in the dining room until 10:30 or 11. We ended up having to make extra strong Sunday ammonia cleaner that we would use on the surrounding tables to get them to leave. As a high schooler, it was infuriating. Story 30. We had an 8:50 to 8:55 crowd on Sundays too. It was the fast food with the square burgers, except they were also so disgusting, we could be there until long after the kitchen was closed, doing the dining room and bathrooms. Big group of them, and our spineless manager would not throw out paying customers. Finally, one of the new guys started adjusting the big clock in the dining room, 1 minute at a time while the manager's back was turned, until it was 5 minutes fast. Then he'd go at fake 8:59 and lock the doors. One time he did it while the Sunday night people were in the parking lot, getting out of their cars. Waved to me. I immediately asked the manager the most complicated question I could think of about a training thing that needed answering in the office, and that kept him so busy that not even the latecomers' impotent knocking could be noticed, while clock manager calmly lifted the phone off the hook and cleaned it. Next week, another of us showed the manager something fascinating in a catalog for his car at that hour, and again, the phone got sanitized. The week after that, they tried to show up early at 8:40, only to discover the doors locked again. All the chairs up and the whole place being professionally rug cleaned. 4th week, they didn't return. We all chipped in and got Clock Changer a PlayStation 2, which was a big deal. Story 31. The mayor of my small town had a private party in my bar/restaurant. Bunch of middle-aged people, most of the females were local teachers. Drunk, stumbling all over, spilling, breaking glasses, trying to hug me. But this one guy, oh my god. This fat, sweaty, middle-aged, disgusting man went behind my bar and broke at least 3 glasses, refused to pay. When I yeeted him out and refused to serve him because he was so drunk, he took out a bag of cocaine and snorted it off the bar. Then he looked at me all smug and victorious. I called my boss hoping he would come and solve it, but he was a mama's boy who was playing entrepreneur on his father's expense, and he was super excited that the mayor wanted to party in his place. He joined in on the madness. When they started trashing the furniture, he finally dismissed the party. He helped me clean. I noped the F out the next day, of course. Story 32. I used to work at a candy store in a popular area for tourism in my rich, white hometown. Lots of dumb people, lots of annoying people, and lots of bullcrap. But I'd say despite this, one of the worst customers I worked with wasn't actually a customer. We hadn't opened yet, and I was outside washing the windows and tables by myself. I was 17. An older man, probably 50 to 60, walked up behind me while he was walking down the sidewalk and said, "Looking good." Other than that, I had a customer come in once while we were open and I was working my section of our store's counter. I said, "Hi, welcome to store. Would you like to try some free samples today?" In my very over-enthusiastic customer service voice. It's some middle-aged effing bozo again with his wife, and he turns to her and says, "Hey honey, would you like samples?" Clearly mocking me. His wife looked at me while he laughed, and I just stared at him like, "Are you effing kidding me, dude?" Until he got the hint. Last story, a pizza place I currently work at. I picked up our phone, and a little girl, probably like 7 years old, was like, "Hi, I ordered a pizza, and I was wondering when it's gonna be here." She sounded obviously very nervous to have to call on the phone and talk, but I helped her the best I could. I was kind of new, and told her it was going to be 10 to 15 as their food was already on the road. Less than 5 minutes later, I get another call, and it's this woman, and she's like, "Hi, my daughter called you guys a while ago, and she said you guys told her the pizza would be here in a couple minutes, and you refused to refund the order when she called, and it's not here yet. You lied to my daughter. Give us our money back." It's obvious this woman wasn't expecting the same person who helped her kid to pick up, and I was like, "Ma'am, I was on the phone with your daughter 5 minutes ago. I did not say it was almost there. I said it would be 15 to 20 minutes, and at no point did your daughter ask for a refund." She stops for a sec, and she was not expecting me to know that she was straight up lying. But the average person who calls on the phone to order pizza, instead of ordering online like a normal person, isn't very bright to begin with, much less someone who calls on a Saturday night, close to Christmas, and gets angry when the delivery time is over 2 to 2.5 hours when she wants the pizza in 30 minutes or less. Average delivery time for 6 on a Saturday obviously wasn't 30 minutes ever, so IDK what prescription pills this mom was taking, but she had worm brain anyway. So she basically spent 10 minutes on the phone screaming at me about how I'm stupid, how my big-ass pizza chain store is gonna be sorry. IDK, dumb crap like that. She's just insulting me and my place of work, like I give a crap about my job or something, and telling me to refund it and trying to get me to give out our driver's personal cell number. Eventually I'm like, yeah, F this psycho female dog. I put her on hold and let one of my poor managers handle it. By the time he got on the phone, her pizza was going to be there any second, and she screamed at my manager and screamed at the driver until they decided to ban her from ordering from the locations in our area. People are psycho. Edit. I deleted Reddit and was not expecting this to get so many comments, lol. To break down the whole thing with phone orders, the way phone orders work at the company I work for is downright dumb. We have an entire store full of things we have to do, and usually phone orders are an inconvenience because we either have to listen to the ring while we do something that's more important, or we have to drop what we're doing so the call can be answered, which isn't something that can be done most of the time. And because calling on the phone simply isn't a very efficient way to order food, even if it's your preferred way to do it. People on the phone tend to be pretty rude too. This is Reddit, so people are going to get mad if I don't clarify that it's not all phone orders, but yeah. So to clear up what some people were saying in the comments, I wouldn't literally say it's dumb to order over the phone unless it's the weekend at dinner time. Oftentimes people get on the phone during these rushes, wait for what I assume is at least 10 minutes, and then proceed to get on the phone and yell at us about how the wait on the phone was ridiculous. You don't have to wait to place an order online, and your order 100% gets put in our system correctly because there's no communication error that inevitably comes with making another person put in your order. Also, I just think it's weird that someone would rather speak to a stranger than not talk to a stranger, but obviously that's a personality thing, lol. Final thoughts. Just want y'all to know it was a joke and y'all need to chill. Story 33. When I worked at a Subway one night, we were running out of spinach. A guy dressed like a cowboy came in and ordered a footlong. We get to the spinach and the cowboy says, "I want a lot of spinach." Good luck with that. We're only supposed to put pinches on anyways, but this guy is used to me giving people extra when my manager isn't around because I roll that way. But not today. "You're gonna give me more than that," he says in a demanding tone. "We're running out of spinach today," I say, knowing a boomer tantrum brewing when I see one. "Give me more." I give him pinches, but he wants handfuls. The cowboy demands, "I need more spinach than that, boy." "Sir, we're running out of spinach." "Do you know how much I come here and they give me all the spinach I want?" I only gave people extra when they're nice, so F off, dude. "Yeah, other customers are gonna want spinach tonight, though." "I've been coming here for years, even though your prices keep going up." Okay. Why do the prices keep going up? In my head, because this isn't a restaurant, it's a sandwich factory, and companies in unchecked capitalism are free to maximize profit as opposed to worry about food quality, health, price, or what silly cowboys think. What I said? I'm a cashier, dude. They don't even let me touch the board. You just talked yourself out of a sale. What's your manager's number? I gave him my number. Cowboy leaves and leaves me a voicemail. I text back one thing. Yee-haw. Story 34. It's a takeout pizza place, but this is a fun one. It's the day before a huge event in my town. Draws in lots of visitors from around the world. Obviously, a pizza delivery place is going to be busy. Past 8 p.m. on said day, this guy calls, ordering $160 worth of food for delivery. It's like 10 large pizzas and a bunch of wings. Okay, normal delivery time for anything is an hour. I knew it was a lot more than we could handle in an hour. I asked an older coworker, and he told me it would be an hour and a half because the chicken is going to take so long, and we can put max 4 large pizzas on the oven at once. And again, we have a lot of other orders. I tell the guy, I need it by 9. Sir, we can't deliver that much food within an hour, especially not tonight. We're backed up as it is. It's too long of a wait. Well, if you pick it up, we might be able to have it ready in 45 minutes. But it's a stretch even then. Fine, I don't want it. So, yeah, someone canceled a $160 order because we were too busy to get it delivered in under an hour the day before a huge event in our town. Oh, did I mention that this was our fire chief? Story 35. Former restaurateur and bar owner here. Worst customer was the assistant chef, who got drunk after closing the kitchen and tried to pick a fight with me. Actually took a swing at me. I brought him in the next day and we had a long chat about his conduct. I let him keep his job, provided he gave up drinking when on the premises. A couple weeks later, I showed up unexpectedly and he was at the bar drinking. The other cooks, knowing he should not be there, saw me coming through the parking lot and shuffled him off and hid him in the kitchen before I could find him drunk at the bar. I did find him, however. He was passed out, standing up in the kitchen, leaning against the prep table. His pants were around his ankles and he had pissed everywhere. I fired him instantly, and as punishment, the other cooks had to stay through the night to disassemble, deep clean, and disinfect the kitchen. Best customer was the one we nearly killed. She asked if there were any mushrooms in the lasagna, and the waitress told her there were no mushrooms in the lasagna. The customer, however, didn't state she was allergic to mushrooms, and the tomato sauce used in the lasagna actually did have mushrooms. Her face swelled up, and her body promptly rejected the skin from the inside of her mouth and lips, which all began peeling off in big blisters while her breathing slowly became more difficult. Thankfully, she was okay in the end and didn't take any sort of action against us. Story 36. I have a few stories, but the lady at the cafe was the only one that actually made me cry from being so angry. At the cafe I worked at, I was making the drinks one day, and coworker was at the register. We were very busy, so she missed writing down the specific instructions for one of the orders. All I knew was that the customer wanted a small black tea, so I make it and call it out. The lady tells me she wants it in 2 cups, very rudely, so I split it up and put it on the counter. She then says she asked for extra hot water in both cups and tells me I'm terrible at listening to directions. So she's basically asking for 2 teas for the price of 1, but I don't have time to argue, so I just do it and put it back on the counter. She then spills it on her hand while picking it up from the counter and yells, "Ow! Why did you do that?" as if I handed it to her myself and intentionally poured it on her. She then proceeded to go on a tirade about how she would sue and I'd lose my job. I was so effing mad that I started crying, and I guess that made her feel kind of bad or something, because she came back after she finished her tea to tell me her hand was okay, so there was no need for legal recourse. As if that was supposed to make me feel better. She was an insane piece of work that I had the pleasure of dealing with a handful of times. Her brother that she came in with would often apologize on her behalf. Story 37. I worked at a grocery store that had hot food to go and pre-prepped meals. I worked in that department for 4 years and had a lot of messed up customers. We used to joke that even the crazies have to grocery shop, lol. We had a glass-covered counter with heat pads and lights to hold the food. The counter allowed 2 people to be served at once, which was handy in a rush, but could cause some issues. On this night, I started serving a lady who ordered something and the rest of the chicken wings. My coworker started serving the second customer in line, who had heard the first order. She wanted chicken wings as well, so my coworker told her she would have to wait about 5 to 10 minutes for the next batch to come out. She immediately flipped out, saying that she ordered them first, she hadn't, and that her kids were hungry at home. She insisted that the other lady wait instead. I finished packing my customer's wings and began handing them to her. The rude lady was saying something like, "Wow, you couldn't leave any for me?" At the same time, she shoves the first lady into the counter in an attempt to reach for the wings. She pushed her so hard the glass case rattled and the baby the first lady had in a carriage began to cry. The second lady kind of snapped out of it and went to pay and leave. The lady I was serving was so stunned she didn't know what to do. We told her to call the police because she had been assaulted. She agreed and went outside to see if we could get the other woman's license plate. Apparently, in the parking lot, the lady who'd stormed out almost hit her as she was leaving. The police arrived and took everyone's statements. Afterward, I saw both ladies, and after getting the point across, the lady who was shoved dropped the charges. What a crazy day, though. Edit. I'm from Canada, so our laws are a bit different than Americans, but I don't know enough about how they work to comment. So beginning this story, I did not have cat fight in the foyer over some chicken wings on my bingo card. So yeah, that was unexpected, kind of wild. Thanks for sharing. Story 38. I worked as a server in a 24-hour diner in a small Massachusetts city. There's a prestigious school, Williston Northampton School, around the corner. Wealthy kids, almost all of them are awful. The school does this thing called Button Bucks. It's a prepaid card, and many of the businesses in town accept them, including the diner. Those kids treated us like we're subhuman, snapping fingers, interrupting me while I was taking another customer's order, make a giant mess, crack jokes about us, all sorts of crappy things. Then they don't tip. I had one group of boys order about $70 worth of food, paid with a $100 bill. I brought them their change, some bills and 13 cents in change, and they walked out the door and they made a point to tell me, "Your tip is on the table." I could tell by the way he said it that there was some crappy thing going on. They put the 13 cents in a cup full of water, napkins, ketchup, half-chewed fries, just a nasty cup they made just to be mean. The 13 cents on the bottom of the glass was my tip. That's the only time I threw a glass in the trash. I refuse to degrade myself further by picking through it. It's been years now, and even now I feel rage just thinking about those Williston kids. F the Willies. Story 39. Happened right before the shutdown. 3 siblings, teen boy, preteen girl, and elementary girl, come in without their parents for tacos an hour before closing. They order 3 tacos, but they come with 2 in an order, so I clarify that they want 6 tacos. Preteen girl, PTG. We come all the time and we get them as singles. With a bad attitude and not looking up from her phone, by the way. Me. I'm sorry, we only offer single tacos during happy hour, 4 to 7 p.m. PTG. Well, last time we were here, we got them. Me. I'm new here, so it was probably an old thing we did. PTG. New since last week? At this point, I'm getting frustrated arguing with a child and ask if she wants to speak to my manager. PTG. Whatever. But if I see on the receipt that they're singles, I'm gonna have to kill you. All with a smile on her face. Attention, parents. If you send your kids to a restaurant alone, please teach them manners. Thank you. TLDR. 11-year-old Karen tries me as if she knows more than me. The employee then threatens to kill me. Story 40. I worked at a local Italian restaurant, and one night I had a couple that came in and sat themselves, then demanded their menus. First red flag. When I came over, the man told me how he was from Italy, and he already noticed that the carbonara isn't made like real carbonara. The real stuff apparently has 4 types of cheeses on it. He made me check with the kitchen to see if they could make it the real way. We couldn't. Then he still decided to get it, knowing he wouldn't like it. At this point, I knew that I was going to get a crappy tip because who the hell orders something they don't think they're going to like? Anyways, I get them their complimentary bread and he complains that it's not hot enough. It stays in a bread warmer. So I have the chef pop it in the pizza oven, but the dude isn't happy with it still. So I have to wait for the kitchen to prepare fresh bread and he barely ate any in the end. Surprising no one, this guy hated the carbonara and he of course chewed me out over it and told me how disappointing he thought our restaurant was and how now he'll have to drive back home to Miami unhappy. I comped his bill, apologized, and told him I hoped the rest of his night went well. The entire time his wife said nothing and sheepishly smiled at me. No tip, of course, but him leaving was good enough for me. Story 41. When I was bartending one night, I had 2 people come in that seemed a little loose, but not so much that I shouldn't serve them. I gave them a round or 2, and they were having fun and interacting well with customers, until they weren't. They started crossing the line where I felt comfortable serving them anymore, and I probably gave them one more round than I should have, but I was hoping they would cut themselves off. Well, the time came to cut them off. I apologized and had to let them know that I couldn't serve them anymore because they were being disruptive in a small bar and were obviously very drunk. At this point, one of the two starts yelling at me for refusing to serve her, and then when it got so bad that the customers around her started defending my choice, she then started throwing a tantrum at them and then my manager after that. So that part I can deal with. People get drunk and say all sorts of crap they don't mean. You have to learn to brush it off. What truly effing baffled me is that while the one customer was screaming at me and everyone else in range of her voice, her friend had retreated to the bathroom and set fire to one of the wicker baskets that we used as a trash can. They left before one of our poor barbacks was told our bathroom was on fire by a customer. I've broken up fights. I've had one customer puke 3 times in the process of trying to get them out. I've had to kick out people 3 times my size for being bigoted and intolerant. I've had people yell at me for cutting them off. And I've had so many people just fall asleep on the bar top. You know who you are. But arson just really took the cake. Crazy thing is, after all that bullcrap, I've always encountered way more good than bad, and I truly miss being behind the bar during this quarantine. Hopefully, I'll get to see you crazy effers soon. Story 42. I only had 2 tables at the beginning of a weekday shift. We were a bar/lounge, so slow weekdays were common. For some reason, they chose to sit near each other. Well, one table ordered barbecue chicken nachos, and once they were ready, I took them out. The second table saw them, and after I dropped them off, she asked me what they had ordered, quote, because it looked amazing. So I told her what appetizer it was, listed the toppings for her, told her it was available barbecue chicken, plain, or steak. She said that she wanted exactly what the other table had, and I told her that that was the barbecue chicken option. She confirms. I put in the order. Bring it out to her. She's polite, takes the food. She's eaten about half the nachos when I stop by to ask her if she needs anything, and she tells me, this is not what I ordered. I want a refund. I don't like barbecue sauce. At this point, who gives a crap? So I tell her sorry, we'll take them off the check. And I take the half plate back to the kitchen. I stop by her table to check on her drinks shortly after. For some reason, she's suddenly irate. She wants to know where her new free order of barbecue chicken nachos is. I explained to her that she would have to pay to reorder. They wouldn't be free, especially if she was trying to order the same thing. I remind her that there's barbecue sauce on the barbecue chicken nachos, and she returned the last order because she doesn't like barbecue sauce. This old-ass female dog starts yelling at me about how she's owed a new dish for free, and she became the first and only customer I flat out told we would refuse to accept any further food orders from. She closed out her drink tab and decided to linger for about another hour. We allowed indoor smoking and were just about the only place left in the city that did. So she chain-smoked her gross clove cigarettes, and the pleasant table nearby who watched everything happen tipped me $40 and told her she was rude AF on their way out. So I guess it worked out all right. Story 43. Okay, so a middle-aged couple sits down at a table. In our restaurant, we have separate tables for lunch, so we get more seatings. A lovely old couple who are regulars here sit down next to the mid-aged couple. The middle-aged couple suddenly lose their crap, saying, "How dare you sit next to us? We're having our meal here. Move to another table." That entire area of the restaurant was basically for me to watch over and take orders at. We always had 3 waiters outside and 1 inside. I was there long enough to be trusted with the inside part, because they had the better tips usually. So I ask what's wrong, despite knowing damn well the middle-aged couple is the dicks. Old couple are dumbstruck over what just happened. Manager walks in, tells me to take orders as usual. The moment the dick couple asks for the check, he tells me to give the old couple a treat on the house and to say, for being so patient with the service. Middle-aged couple immediately asks why they didn't get one. I mention a noise complaint from other tables from the tables outside. Haven't seen that couple since. Story 44. Worked as a host at a Persian restaurant in the 90s, Chicago. Had a Saudi Arabian political big shot come in all decked out in an expensive man dress. He threw a fit because I assigned him a female server who was Persian, refused to have a female serve them. We were very busy, so the owner asked that I wait on him because I'm an Iraqi man, which carried a lot of respect back then, since most of us were dying from the wars. What he didn't know is that I'm a small minority from the Middle East, a Christian, one that still speaks an ancient language. I served that table with my crucifix chain exposed on my chest. He was furious, but didn't say anything. All of the Muslim waiters were cracking up because we all despise Saudi Arabia for the oil-hungry sellouts they've always been. That little rich man was terrified of me. All the power he had in the Middle East was destroyed by an Iraqi Chicago boy. I made him my female dog that night. Over 20 years later, and I still remember it vividly. POS. Story 45. Oh boy, story time. I was working at the most popular Italian fine dining chain in America. We opened at 11, but I was scheduled for 10:30 to do opening duties. Two middle-aged women were at the doors at 10:45. We let them in because it's not a big deal. But what is a big deal is that they both ordered drinks and our bartender didn't get there until 11. I let them know and they seem okay with it. This is where things fall to crap. I drop off Waters while they wait for their drinks. That's great, honey, but that's not what I wanted. Haha. They smile and it's clear she's just trying to make a bad joke. Again, I tell them that it's only 10:55 and the bartender's not in yet. They tell me to make the drinks. I can't because corporate rules. I ask my manager to make the drinks. While he does that, I take their food orders. I don't remember what their mains were, but they got calamari as an app. They start oversharing, like a lot. Turns out they're out to lunch because one of them was at the hospital and just got a lot of blood drawn. They mention trashy men, bad drivers, and they're swearing a lot. Now it's 11:05-ish and they have their calamari and their drinks. Ugh, was that so hard? Finally. Other guests, including young families, arrive and sit in my section. They eat half the calamari and then decide it was undercooked. It was golden and perfect. I asked the kitchen to drop a new calamari and it took like a minute longer than is typical. Surprise, this ruins the calamari. They hate it. I'm not eating this crap, and I asked the manager to take it off their check. They're taking up a lot of my time and asking for a lot of little things. I go to take care of some other tables. They ask if I'm okay, then ask if I could ask the woman to stop swearing so much in front of their children. Next time they drop an F-bomb, I tell them that this is a family restaurant. Blah, 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 free country. Oh, I want another drink. Fine, whatever. I put the order in. Their meals are up right at that second, so I return within a minute to drop their food off. Where's my second drink? Hello? Now they're banging their half-empty glasses on the table. I offer grated Parmesan on their meals. One says, "Come on, what do you think?" Now they're yelling at me and I start to cry, while still trying to take care of my other tables, who are angels. I asked my manager to take over the rude folks and to let them know they're cut off from alcohol, and he tore them a new one in the way only managers are allowed to. They got upset they couldn't order more drinks and asked for the check and leave. They barely leave enough cash to cover the bill, but one comes back and asks if she left enough of a tip. Because yeah, I could get fired for saying that, but also, I'm so done. She gave me $5 more, and I never saw them again. Worst customers ever. Best manager ever. Story 46. Not any particular customer, but I used to work in this restaurant in downtown Palo Alto a few years ago. One day, of all people, Mark Zuckerberg comes in with his wife, baby, and father. I was guessing, and they sit in a booth. Then, a F-ton of people follow them in and seat themselves. The entire time, they're all just looking at them and sneaking in pictures. When I was bringing a sandwich out to some dude, I saw him texting someone, "I'm sitting in the same restaurant as Mark Zuckerberg." Great for business, but it was super weird to be surrounded by a bunch of people who act like a defining moment of their life is sitting in the same diner as someone famous. We didn't get a lot of terrible customers, but there were a few that stand out in memory. There was one mother with serious Karen vibes that sent fries back to the kitchen because we seasoned them with parsley. Her words to me were, "You're pretty young, right? You don't have kids, so you wouldn't understand. He won't eat them because of the green stuff." I just smiled and nodded, but I was rolling my eyes in my mind. Story 47. Just a bit of background info. I'm American with Mexican descent. I lived in a border town and we had a lot of wealthy/snobby Mexicans come to the US to shop. I was working in a hotel restaurant and had to deal with these people all the time. It's also important to know I don't speak Spanish. Most of them spoke English, so it was no big deal. One time, this lady calls and asks a question. I told her I didn't speak Spanish and was the only person available and could not help her. She asked what my name was. Because my last name is a Mexican last name, she told me I was a disgrace to all Mexicans. I was like, well, good thing I'm American. She hung up and I immediately called my boss to inform them of what just happened. This lady called the front desk of the hotel and complained to the manager. They called me over and said, "Hey, this lady called and she wanted me to fire you, but we aren't going to do that." I nearly crapped my pants thinking I was going to get fired. The manager said he was sick and tired of Mexican nationals trying to get people fired just because they don't get their way. I love my heritage and celebrate it, but it's not my fault my parents didn't teach me Spanish. Story 48. I used to work at a Starbucks right next to a Walmart, and one of the Walmart employees would come for lunch every day. She was maybe in her 60s, and she was a very strange woman and very demanding. She always ordered a spinach feta wrap on a plate with a fork and knife and a tall hot coffee with room for cream. So when I saw her, I would say hi and then say her order. She would say, "Yes, that's right." Then, while I'm typing it in, she would say it again very sternly. Then, while I was putting it in the oven and getting the plate ready, she would tell me again, very sternly. She would repeat her order a few times despite me displaying that I know what it is, and she was always angry and scoffing during the process. The next part of her ritual was to go find a table and rearrange the furniture very loudly. She would drag the metal bottom of a table across the polished concrete floor, then drag the wood chairs across it too. We, and even some customers, had offered to help her move, but she always insisted she could do it. So for a solid 5 minutes a day, everyone in the store had to listen to very loud sounds. Next, she would go get her coffee ready at the little bar and make a huge mess. Always pulled out a bunch of sugar packets and spilled it everywhere. Then she would take a crapload of napkins, but not use them to wipe up. Then she would come back to the counter and squeeze in front of whoever was currently being helped and say that we were out of napkins. Then she would go have her food and drink, leave the plate and cup there, go into the bathroom, and throw all the napkins on the floor and some paper towels too. So we always had someone go clean up after her. Then she would go back to work and return later. When she returned, she would always complain that she had left her stuff on a table and that it was now gone. We explained that we had cleaned it up and that she cannot reserve a table for herself. She would be furious and demand a free coffee, but she had already gotten a coffee, so I would just give her a refill that Starbucks already offers for free for members. Then again she would drag tables and make a huge mess for us to clean up. We were always kind and always did whatever she wanted, but she was always a female dog anyway. Story 49. I was a waitress for a small while, but I got good really fast. I sort of became known for taking big parties, and I was really good at it too. There was this one group of 4 who either didn't look at the menu or wanted to make my day hell. If they ordered margaritas, I would ask, "House margarita?" and they agreed. Then when I would bring them the house margarita, they would say, "No, I wanted," specific margarita name. They ended up coming in with a big party my second to last day, and the main a-hole, who was the one who had a majority of the issues the first time, was upset that the food wasn't coming out faster. It was a big party, so we had to do a few trays. While we were trying up the food, he ended up coming into the kitchen and trying to grab the tray off our food runner's shoulders. He also made me cry at some point, IDK. Unfortunately, this was a TGI Chili Bees, so obviously he wasn't banned or kicked out or anything. I'm just happy I don't work there anymore, cause there was also always drama in the kitchen too. F that guy. Story 50. I managed a mom and pop pizza place for a while, and I had a regular customer accuse me of stealing a piece of his pizza. He's a pharmacist, and the pharmacy was a half a block away from our store. He berated me in front of his customers and staff. At this point, I was at the counter buying cold medication because I was sick AF. I needed the medicine, but I didn't want to give him my money. I was pissed and flustered. I could make any pizza I wanted in my downtime, and his pizza was 2 toppings I dislike, pepperoni and jalapeno. He ended up taking his tip back. I should have refused to serve him, but he already had the pizza. I told him since there's so many cameras, maybe he should check those out and see who actually did it, instead of accusing and insulting me. Also said that I'm sure the tech that did it was probably terrified to come forward and admit to it, because they saw the verbal abuse I received on an assumption. About 5 months went by, and finally the guy ordered again. I was so excited for this. I placed 1 pepperoni per square slice, then set the jalapeno dead center of the pepperoni. I walked it over, and when he saw it was me, the look on his face was, oh crap, no. The look on his face when he checked the pizza was priceless. He knew he effed up. I'm guessing he checked the cameras. Then he went from ordering weekly to not at all. He probably figured I'd forget or he'd get a different person. Nope. I made sure it was me. I gave him my tip back along with his coin change because F that guy. Best part is he had no idea I was half living with his stepdaughter in St. Louis the whole time. Story 51. My story isn't really bad, but just highlights some of the lesser known things you have to deal with. I worked at a very upscale restaurant, and there was a regular that came in fairly often to sit at the bar after work and have a drink. I was a university student at the time, and as he was leaving, I gave him the usual, "Thanks, have a good evening." He stops and compliments me on a headband I was wearing and then asked me if I'm a student at the university. I said yes, and then he goes on a diatribe about some philosophical beliefs in the college admissions cheating scandal. The university I went to was involved, and this was right when it was big news. I'm not one for using the term mansplaining, and I think it a bit ridiculous, but never have I been in a situation where that term could be used to describe so accurately what had taken place. He asked me about my feelings on the ethics behind it, and I just give a very vague answer such as, it was wrong and unfair to students who work hard to get into a school like this. He keeps goading me, talking about the deep ethical/philosophical works, asking if I've read about utilitarianism, anyone taking Ethics 101 has heard of it, and then basically says how my university is teaching things all wrong. At this point, he's been talking to me for at least 5 minutes, and I'm trying to give him body language that is still kind, but hints at me not being interested in this conversation. He gets really close to me and asks for my ethics professor's name. He then grabs a piece of paper and writes down questions for me to ask her in class because he disagrees with how ethics is taught at universities and thinks he's so smart with his question. I was very annoyed and tried to push back with what he was saying, but for wanting to have a conversation with me, he sure dismissed anything I had to say and just wanted to hear himself talk. My managers had come around twice and saw that he was still bothering me, so they sent someone to me to ask me for help with something to get him away. Thank God. Never have I been so annoyed by someone and also felt so patronized. All I could do was sit there and listen to him for at least 10 minutes. Although in upscale restaurants you don't get a lot of crazies, which is nice, you do get some pretty entitled people that you have to try and make happy, which can be annoying. Entitled customers are everywhere, whether you're eating at a maximum Michelin star restaurant or you're walking into a McDonald's in the middle of Kansas. Does not matter, customers are always going to act like that, and it's a dang shame. Story 52. I worked at a pizza place for about a year and two come to mind. The first phone call I ever took was for a takeout order. My manager was standing over my shoulder, so I was pretty nervous. The guy already sounded pissed off when I answered. He gave me a hypothetical order and asked how much it would be. I told him $15. It was wrong, it should have been $8, but I didn't know what I was doing. He clearly knew that I was wrong, so he screamed, "What the F are you talking about? It's never been that much before." So I realized I messed up and told him it would actually be $8. He then proceeded to tell me that if I try to rip him off again, that he'd meet me in the parking lot, aka that he would find me and fight me. We had a policy where if someone gave us their debit card number over the phone, we'd ask them to read it back to us to make sure we got it right. We weren't allowed to read their numbers out loud, and we had to get confirmation that it was the right number. Our boss was pretty strict on this. I'm helping out a lady in her order, and when I ask her to reread her number so I can confirm I got it right, she chews me out for about a minute straight and keeps telling me that I need to pay attention and starts saying stuff like, "I wish this place would stop hiring stupid kids." If my boss wasn't around and as strict as he was, I wouldn't have taken that much crap. The funniest part of both of these stories is that we had to smile on the phones because our boss thought it would make us sound happy for our customers. If our boss ever saw us not smiling on the phones, he'd come give us crap in the middle of the call. So both of these calls, I was just smiling like a dumbass the whole time. That was my first job, and I do not miss it. Story 53. Not exactly worst customer, but just left me utterly confused and a little shocked. I worked at a fancy restaurant and had customers who started off by ordering their appetizers and then went on to order their mains. They decided that they were just going to split the two mains. Anyways, the first was a salmon dish and the other was a filet mignon, steak, like beef, from a cow, just to clarify. I'm not sure if they had a different idea of what a filet mignon was or just decided to not read the description. Example, 8-ounce steak. Because when I brought it to them, they seemed a bit confused as if I had brought the wrong dish. I began to walk away when they got my attention again and began to tell me that I brought them the wrong thing. "This looks like steak. We didn't order that. We ordered a filet. We don't eat steak." I tried to explain to them that what they ordered, a filet mignon, is a steak and offered to show them the menu. They then admitted they weren't sure what a filet mignon was and didn't read the description, as suspected, and decided to order something else off the menu. They decided to keep the filet mignon though, not cheap either, and pay for it anyways and give it to a friend, so I boxed it up for them. On their way out, they handed me the box and said, "This one's on us," and left. They were really nice about it, but I was just so confused in the moment when they were saying they didn't order a steak. I think a filet in their mind was fish. I guess they just thought of the Filet-O-Fish from McDonald's. Story 54. Oh boy, do I have a story for you guys. So I work at a restaurant with my mom. I got the job when I was 18, and my mom has been working there for 25 years. My mom worked her way up from waiting tables to bartending and had been bartending for years now. The first summer I worked there as a server was a typical busy summer night. My mom and I had been there all day as we had both worked doubles, and it was coming close to 6-ish at night. The way my restaurant is set up there is a bar side and a dining room side. I was in the dining room with 2 other servers. One was an older lady. The older lady ended up slipping and falling right in front of the kitchen to the door. She shattered her elbow and her knee. She couldn't move, so at this point we're all waiting for the ambulance to arrive and dishes are just stacking up and no food is going out of the kitchen because none of us can go in. My manager that night had to end up taking over all the tables that the server who fell had. Now, in the midst of all this, I got sat a 2-top table. Apparently, the host informed me she saw the couple practically fist fighting in the parking lot before they came in. Great. I greet the table and they seem okay. They both order drinks from the bar and I bring them promptly. They ordered their food and ended up getting 4 entrees for the both of them. They were all expensive seafood dishes and at this point their check is over $100. A couple minutes after I put the food in is when the other server slipped and fell, so of course the food for my table took a little longer. The food finally comes and my mom just happened to help me run the food over. We put it down and the woman goes, "Finally!" And we explain that an older server fell in the kitchen and had major injuries. Then the man goes, "Well, that's just great." You know, a totally normal response to being told an old lady just fell and can't get up. The lady starts literally manhandling the lobster roll she got, complaining it was cold. "Okay, no big deal. We can get you another one right away. Anything else?" The lady goes, "Well, now I need another drink." Since my mom was bartending and at this point I have about 5 other tables going, my mom made the drinks and brings them to my table. The woman at the table says to my mom, "Oh, well, you're really good at your job." And my mom says, "Well, I've been here for 25 years, to which the woman responds, "Oh, so you have to pick up the slack for all the others?" My mom said, "No, we're a team and we all help each other. Plus, your server is my daughter." The woman is now just looking for a reaction out of my mom because she goes, "Oh, well, I'm really sorry about that." My mom is a calm, cool, and collected person, so she just goes, "Well, I'm not. My daughter's pretty great." At this point, the woman proceeds to lose her crap and call my mom a female dog, screaming at the top of her lungs in the middle of the dining room. The man at the table got up in the middle of the interaction and just went outside. My manager ended up having to comp all of their food. Other tables that weren't even mine were coming over to me and apologizing. I went to check on a table of 2 guys right next to my nightmare table in the middle of that crazy female dog screaming to my manager and asked if I could get them anything else. One guy goes, "Yeah, a muzzle for that female dog." That table ended up leaving me almost a $50 tip, and all my other tables also left me a lot extra because they had seen what happened. Another one of my tables asked me what the hell was wrong with that lady, and then just goes, "It's probably drugs." LOL. The lady ended up leaving this huge note on the receipt that was all sideways and sloppy and looked like it was written by a 5th grader saying she always tips her server. LOL. Yeah, right, lady. But this time she wasn't, and my female dog mom could tip me instead. LOL. The whole thing was absolutely wild. Luckily, it's been a couple years since that happened, and I've never had a table that horrible since. Story 55. I served Elton John at my restaurant in Los Angeles last year. I told him how cool it was to meet him in person, but I didn't want to be a douche and bother him and ask him for photos or anything. He said, "Oh, like you're doing now?" I was taken aback, and all I could say was, "Huh?" But he kept cutting me off, going, "Huh? Huh? Huh?" and closing his hand shut in front of my face. I walked away and continued serving customers. I heard him chuckle as I walked off. When I came to settle a bill with the customer up front, I saw him trying to walk out the doors with like 15 garlic breads in his hands without paying. The girl at the counter was very nice about it and professional and was like, "Sir, you need to pay for those first." At first, he kept pretending to be tired and not hear her, but eventually turned back around and brought them to the counter. When she took one of the garlic breads and started scanning it multiple times, he stopped her and told her to scan them each individually to prevent any electrical interference. Then turned around and winked at me. I don't even think that's a word. After she scanned each bread and put them in a bag and started to say the price, he kept interrupting her by yawning really loudly. Yeah, so again, spoiler alert for anyone that doesn't live in LA or New York or a city where these famous people frequently are out and about, yeah, most of them are douchebags. And, there's an old cliche saying, never meet your heroes. And this is why. Most of them are just pretentious jerks, and they put on a front for cameras, and they look great on TV. They seem like nice, sensible people. We admire their work, their music, professional athletes that are looked up to for their talent. But if you encounter them on the streets, they absolutely suck. So yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that Elton John was this big of a tool bag. Story 56. I've got a ton, but these ones stand out at the moment. When I was a waitress at a dive bar in Florida, I had a patron offer to buy drinks for everyone in the bar. Not that it matters, but he was a very elderly fisherman who both appeared and smelled as if he had just arrived back to land for the first time in quite a while. I do my job and get the drinks for everyone, probably about 20 or so. Tips were sparse as it was, so I didn't expect much. When I came back with the bill, he paid me and told me to keep the change. The change being 10 cents. I told him he could keep it. He obviously needed it more than I did. Another time, when I was waitressing at a bar in Philly, I had a couple of patrons extremely upset with me because they didn't eat their wings fast enough after they came out, so they were cold by the time they had gotten to them. They were 50 cents that night. They demanded a refund for this inconvenience, which I obviously told them unfortunately I could not provide them with. The silver lining was that they actually tipped me. I found $5 on the table after they had left, stuffed it in my pocket, and have never once felt an ounce of guilt for helping that patron search for it when she came back saying she thinks she may have dropped some cash before she left. Story 57. So, a few stories as I was a server through and a little after college. All in all, I put in around 5 years in a well-known Midwest chain. Story the first. This was my first year or so of serving. We were always busy on Saturday mornings, and most people know that we are primarily known for our breakfast. I'm across the dining room when I hear yelling and some older lady flying double eagles out the door. Come to find out, my hostess that was on had told the lady the wait time and she flew off the handle. Lady berates my hostess. This lady says, "I'm a regular and my family is in here all the time with me, and this is discriminating towards me," which is when she walked out. Story the second. Not necessarily bad, but kind of a waste of my time. We were slow. This was an odd Saturday night, and a family comes in at about 2 hours to close. It was a mom and dad and their 3 kids, which we consider a party table. I had no other tables at the time besides them, so I gave them my full attention. They took forever to order, and then about 10 minutes later, while their order was up, they called a taxi to pick them up. I ended up boxing up their food, and I think they tipped me, but I don't quite remember. It was all in all pretty strange. I have other stories that I can't think of, but my sister was a server with me, and I'll bet she'll jog my memory. I'll comment them later if anyone is interested. Story 58. I worked in a very upscale restaurant as a waiter, and there was this extremely wealthy business person who would come in for lunch and or dinner 4 to 5 times each week. He simply loved the place. Unfortunately for all of us who were waiters, he also happened to be the worst tipper imaginable. 8% on a good day, and even so, the whole time he was extraordinarily demanding. Feeling he was such a great customer, we couldn't help but wait on him hand and foot. So as a result, we took turns waiting on him. Having to wait on him was usually the result of losing a bet. But then it happened. He came in with his 15-year-old daughter. Well, she crushed on me big time. So from that day on, all bets were off. When the rich guy came in, I demanded I wait on him. Holy hell, it was brutal. The only bright sides to the tale are that yes, he was great for the restaurant. He promoted us right and left and led to lots of other wealthy customers who, unlike this horse's ass, they would run up big bills and tip. And yes, he bragged about me to his friends, and I started getting more and more requests. But all in all, no thanks. Story 59. My last day working at my restaurant job. I had an old lady yell at me for doing my job. See, I worked for a Japanese-owned ramen chain in which the staff yells Japanese greetings at you when you enter or leave and when they present your check to you. If you're from Southern California, especially around the LA area, you've probably heard of this place since they're pretty well known in the area. Much like a typical ramen or izakaya restaurant in Japan. Well, this lady didn't like me or the staff yelling greetings, and since she and her son sat in my section, she proceeded to get up in my face and yell at me for making her deaf. People came to our restaurant because they like our loud and vibrant atmosphere, and for some, the staff yelling greetings in Japanese makes them feel like they're back in Japan again. Who the F comes to a typically loud restaurant, complains about the noise volume, and proceeds to ruin the experience for the other diners? Story 60. Work in the industry for 15 years. Work in all areas of a restaurant. When I was a chef, the worst one I had was a woman who wanted a rare steak, but it had to be piping hot. The waiter tried to explain rare steak is best 2 men each side. She sent it back 3 times until she gave up and left. When I was waiting, not really bad customers are rude, so a middle-aged couple walks in. I greet them and offer them a table. The first thing the guy comes out with is, "Do not give us a good table or a good waiter. We don't tip." I put them in my section and gave them the lowest service I could. 10 minutes for drinks, another 10 minutes for the order. Once I had the order, I waited another 10 minutes to give it to the chefs. They asked for the bill when the food came out. I waited till they had finished the last bite, then gave them the bill. They wanted to pay on card. Made out we only had one machine and it was being used, another 15 minutes. They never said anything to me or management. When I was management, I had a group of mums and dads with their young kids. One of the dads threw an empty pint glass at me and one mum threw her handbag at me, all because I wouldn't allow them to have a lock-in and let their very young kids drink. Glad I got out of the industry last year. Story 61. I was a restaurant manager for a couple of years. One of the worst that comes to mind is basically one of the many repeat offenders. One guy would come in with his wife every now and then. He was a little older, maybe 50s or 60s. If he ordered any kind of fish, catfish, redfish, tilapia, etc., I knew he would complain. If he ordered shrimp, we were in the clear. I knew how to smooth things over with him, but it was just annoying because I would have to comp so much crap for him. The complaints would range from, "Your tilapia is smaller than the same restaurant in XYZ city," to, "The cook didn't cook this redfish right," then insist that his wife will not eat her redfish that she ordered. One day he came in when I was off from work. Since the manager on that day hadn't ever dealt with him before, he ended up calling our HQ and complaining to them. I didn't know the guy's name, but I knew who exactly they were talking about when the GM described him and his complaints. This was closer to my last day of work, so I just left it alone. There was a lot of people who would come once a year on someone's B-Day. They always asked to sit at the same table, and always complained about something. Another group was from a church and visited like every other Sunday. We tried to make sure a certain waiter waited on them because he was the only one who kind of figured them out, but they almost always complained too. There was another lady who would come in a day or two after she had eaten there and complain, so she could get a free gift card or a refund. She would also pull the same stunt on the restaurant my husband worked at, so we would complain about her all the time. Just basically anyone who complains every time they come in are the worst. Like, why even come to the restaurant then, if it's so bad? I know the real reason is free food, but come on, get a life. Story 62. I worked at a restaurant in a major college town that mostly catered to the bar scene and drunk/stoned kids. We were usually slammed during the school year, Wednesday to Saturday nights, from about 11 p.m. till 2:30 a.m. But in the summer, we were very slow, and it was often just me in the store and a couple delivery drivers. One summer Wednesday night, around 2:30 a.m., this kid comes in almost fall down drunk. Both delivery drivers were out, so it was just the two of us. I greeted him, but he bypassed the register and walked over to the pickup area. I followed him from behind the counter and asked if he wanted to order anything, and he said that he already had ordered and paid and was waiting for it to be made. There was literally no one else besides the two of us in the store. I'm not sure if he was trying to pull a scam, more likely, or if he just didn't remember. I politely told him that he had not ordered anything yet, but he was adamant that he had. Side note, it's impossible to reason with people who are so drunk they can barely stand up. This went on for a couple rounds, and he got more and more agitated and started yelling and swearing. I told him he needed to leave. He continued his verbal onslaught and started hitting and punching the soda machine. I walked around the counter to confront him and hoped to escort him out without it getting violent. As I rounded the corner, I saw a chair come hurling at me. I didn't have time to move, but luckily it struck the door jamb and split in two. It had some momentum behind it because the bottom half had lodged in the wall just a few inches from my head. He ran out the front door of the store, and I ran after him while I called the cops on my Motorola Razr. Their building was only a couple blocks away. The kid went down a dead-end alley and then turned around and ran back at me. Took a wild swing at my head, which I dodged, stumbled, and then took off running again. A local bartender was getting out of work and witnessed all this and joined me in pursuit. Me still on the phone with the cops trying to direct them to our location. We tracked the kid behind a couple of college houses and then tried to make one more run for it, but the bartender was right there to fling him to the ground just as two cop cars pulled up. My adrenaline was going pretty good, and I was surprised when I got back to the restaurant and noticed how close that chair had come to taking me out. We took a picture of the carnage and posted it on the wall where the chair struck. We also posted a pic of the kid. He was permanently banned. Story 63. I was cashiering a drive-thru at a Lizard's Thicket. Kind of a home cooking kind of place everywhere in SC. Not sure about other regions. Dude came through and ordered a double fried pork chop meal with mashed parties, green beans, and mac and cheese. This was 16 years ago. He pulls up, horrible entitled attitude straight off. I hand him his food with the most convincingly polite aspect I can. Before the window closes, the styrofoam box comes flying back at me and hits me in the face while I'm taking another order. There's only one effing pork chop in here. There were two, but he couldn't see the bottom one because I guess it was covered, and he couldn't be bothered to look under the levitating top chop. Had to remake the plate. Had to ask my shift manager to give him the order. Never throw a correct order at someone making minimum wage, especially if you're wrong. Ugh, that still burns me up. Story 64. The priest at my church, surprisingly. I worked as a server at a golf club, and while there were a lot of terrible guests, he was bad in a different way. Here's a list. He's a priest eating at a pricey golf club. That irks me especially because he's Catholic and supposed to live a simple life. He never paid for himself. Either had someone else at the table pay or charge it to the church? He came every Sunday with his 9 to 16 people and never called ahead. We had to guess the number of people or be left scrambling to move tables and chairs when he came. He wore sandals and he would always take his shoes off and hold one of his feet in his hand. We left pitchers of water, iced tea, and plain ice at his table since it was always so big. If the ice in someone's glass melted, he'd grab a handful of ice from the pitcher with the hand that was just holding his foot and put it in the person's glass, usually accompanied with a, "You look like you need some more ice." F someone who didn't finish their meal. He'd cajole the other guests until someone else took their leftovers. He came in while we had a Father's Day buffet and no a la carte ordering. The kitchen was closed. It took 2 servers and a manager to convince him that he couldn't, in fact, order off the menu. I think foot ice needs to be reiterated. So gross. It wasn't like he was a terrible person, but I stopped going to his church after the second time I had to wait on his table because I lost all respect for him. He also never acknowledged me, even though I had been going to his church for 3 years at that point. Oh well. Story 65. Group of 4 Karens plus 1 kid apiece. Saturday afternoon lunch. General bullcrap. They were rude to the host, the manager, and myself, and demanded things from any staff who walked within 2 feet of their table. Got upset if I dared to attend to another table. They kept trying to catch me in a loop of asking for things where all I did was run back and forth to the kitchen for them. Camped there for 2 hours. Main Karen tried to play the other staff against me. They had the host get something for them and then told her she was awesome, but the server needs some work. She then told the host they had given our server some gratitude, and she gave it right back, and said that in retaliation I had lied to them about being out of lemonade, hence forcing their kids to drink water. Their kids were now drinking soda and iced tea full of sugar. They also told the manager, aka the bartender in nice clothes, that I had dropped a plate on one of their kids. Manager knew they were full of crap. Instead of comping Main Karen's allegedly overcooked steak, she gave her a gift card and empathetically said, "You can use this at any location." I think the female dog got the point, as she hasn't returned. The whole thing was absolutely bizarre. That woman decided she hated me and was outright trying to get me fired. Like, lady, it's not necessary to go that hard in the paint if you're trying to get free food. Just send it back once or twice. Story 66. Once I waited on a family of about 25 people, kids and adults. They ordered so much food and alcohol, and the bill was around $500. They were all nice and polite to me, and there were no issues at all. With big parties, I would never charge them the automatic tip of 20%, which our restaurant suggested, because customers would always end up tipping way more. When the bill came, the grandma wanted to pay, but the other adults insisted that they take the bill. The grandma snuck over to me at the register to pay secretly. She paid with card and gave me no tip at all. She even made sure to write a huge 0 on the tip line. She then went back and told the table that she had paid, and they all cheered for her and glorified her. As they were leaving, all the other adults were so sweet to me and made sure to each thank me personally. It was so annoying because I know if it was anyone else at the table paying, they would have tipped a lot, and they had no idea that I got $0. Needless to say, I learned my lesson after that and always charged the automatic gratuity. Story 67. I used to work at a certain well-known cost-cutting membership warehouse in the food court, and oh god, the stories. My favorite by far is the Cripsy lady. And yes, Cripsy, not crispy. Elderly, short, but had matched her width to her height and had that weird old people loose skin thing going on, but only around the bottom half of her face. It was like her lips were a full 3 sizes too big for her jaw, which left them to kind of flap around as she spoke and chewed with her mouth open. She comes up to the counter with a partially eaten ice cream cone and gets my attention. CL, why isn't my cone crispy anymore? She asks with a mouthful of cone, spraying bits onto the work surface. Me, incredulous but also with minor auditory processing issues. I'm sorry, why is the cone not crispy? CL, genuinely confused. What? Me, you're asking why the cone isn't crispy? CL, yes, when I got it, it was crispy, but now it's not. I had to explain to this admittedly polite elderly lady how the dry cone will absorb the moisture from the melting soft serve over time, and that dry things can be crispy, but not wet things. I had to walk her through the logic 3 times, simplifying further each time, and crush a cone for her to see before she seemed to even start getting the concept, and if I said crispy correctly, she wouldn't understand anything. Eventually, she just nodded, the kind that says, I still don't get it, but okay, and thanked me for my time. I walked around to the back to see my coworkers bright red from holding in their laughter. We had hot dog man who wore the same clothes every time we saw him, 3 times a week, and insisted on his food being actually hot, red, overcooked. He did this because he'd wait 10 minutes after sitting down before actually eating. We also had one guy who did the impossible and got banned from every warehouse in the city for getting pop cups from the garbage to get his soda instead of paying 90 cents for one that was clean, as well as literally throwing people aside so he could stuff his pockets full of the free samples. One guy started throwing the Dixie cups of sauerkraut at us and screaming death threats in front of his wife and kids because we'd run out of the onion cups. An old guy who'd cut to the front of the line and demanded fresh chicken wings. He came in often enough that we should know better, but every time he'd cut in, get told to go to the back of the line, wait his turn, stand in front of the register, refusing to move, so we could continue taking orders until the food was in front of him, check the food and count the number of wings he got, complain that we use wings and drumsticks, finch at the heat while he completely disassembled the order, whine that they were cold and not enough of them, get told we measure by weight, grumble some more, then just stand there until you either said bye or started serving the line that he's held up the past 5 minutes. Finally snapped at him during my last week there after the usual dance had been done, and he started yelling at me, wagging his finger in my face and everything, about how bad I was at my job and I should know better. I just expressed my wonder at how someone who'd been around so long didn't understand things like lineups or basic human decency. Constant complaints about how our sandwich option was beef last week. Why is it turkey now? This change had happened years prior. The family who decided that changing their diuretic baby's diaper on the freaking table in the middle of the seating area during the lunch rush was okay, and left the soiled, putrid-smelling diaper there. Our guy on lobby was out there like a shot-to-run blocker on the table until our cleaning staff could get there with the appropriate kit. Not that this mattered, because the stench led many customers losing their appetites and leaving. One customer who got so pissed that we wouldn't take his order because, sorry, we can't do 30 pizzas in an hour in the middle of dinner rush, that he walked into the kitchen door to swear and threaten us. Good times. Story 68. I had a table of 8 and one lady ordered for everyone. When I asked if anyone wanted to add bacon, cheese to their potatoes, she said, yes, of course. When she got the bill and saw the additional charge for the bacon and cheese, she called me over and said, are you effing dumb? Why the F did you charge me for bacon and cheese? You should have told me it would be extra. I told her that an additional charge should be expected when you add something, walked away and let my manager deal with her. I refused to go to the table after because I don't deserve to be spoken to like that. The manager removed the additional charges just to please her. I really wish he hadn't. This only encourages people to behave this way. Another D-bag customer ordered a bone-in ribeye, which is the fattiest cut of steak we offer. I checked in with the table multiple times and they said everything was fine. The man ate the steak, everything besides the bone, then tells me he wants it taken off his bill because it was too fatty. When I explained it's our fattiest cut of steak and that I would have been happy to get him something else if he had made me aware, he demanded to speak to the manager. My manager explained that because he ate the steak, he would have to pay for it. He chewed her out, stating he could get a better steak at the dollar store. After he paid and left the table, I grabbed the checkbook and found that they left a metal washer instead of a tip. I followed him out to the front of the restaurant and said, excuse me, sir, you forgot this. Seeing as it won't pay my bills, I have no use for it, and handed it back to him. My manager told me she wished I hadn't done that, but I don't work to be mistreated, especially for things I have no control over. One more. I had this couple sit in my section, and from the start they were obnoxious. I went over their order multiple times because they kept changing it. They were weird about what was in the salad, so I flat out named off everything that would be in each of their salads. They agreed that I had the correct order, and I went to get their drinks. When I arrived with their waters, before I even set them down, the lady says to me, "Can I get a straw?" "And it looks like you forgot the bar drinks, huh?" "Nope, your straw is right here in my hand that's currently holding the drinks, and I'm just waiting on the bartender to pour the beer, and I'll bring them right over." When they got the salads, they complained that the toppings were all messed up, and I reminded them that I listed off every single ingredient for each individual salad. Then the lady says to me she wanted grape tomatoes, like we usually use, and it's unacceptable to give her chopped up tomatoes. I've worked there 5+ years, and we have never had grape tomatoes. They start acting nice around the point where they get their meals, saying that they understand it's not my fault. No crap. They came across as people who try to find stuff to complain about, so they don't feel guilty about not tipping. Towards the end of their meal, the lady is rushing me, saying they need boxes in the check. I knew at this point they weren't going to tip me. I go to cash them out, and she asks if I can grab her one more box before closing out their bill. I go in the back to get a box and come out to them gone. They didn't even leave enough cash to cover their bill. Such a waste of my time. Last one. This wasn't my table, but I overheard my coworker's guest talking while I was bussing my table right next to theirs. She was proudly telling the people she was with how she complains at every restaurant she goes to and gets free stuff. I went over to my coworker and warned him to watch out for her, and he begs me to go tell the manager because she had already complained and the manager had threatened to write him up. It's disgusting that someone's livelihood is a joke to some people. I really wish I could go F with these people at their jobs sometimes. Story 69. Served a really nice, middle-aged couple their whole meal. Appetizers, drinks, everything. They were really friendly, and we got along super well the whole time. When it came time to pay, I brought the debit machine, and the husband took it and angrily plugged away at the buttons, mumbling under his breath. I had no idea how the mood switched so quickly. The wife was trying to calm him down and apologize to me, and I was super confused. He then turned to me and started lecturing me about the $1 charge on the bill for mustard. He had asked for an extra side of mustard, and in order to get sides from the kitchen, I had to ring them in and charge. It's silly, I agree, but it's not up to me. Shocked, I tried to let him know that had he told me he was upset over the dollar charge, I would have charged him $1 less on his bill. I could override the price of the bill on the debit machine easily and take the $1 hit for him. He wouldn't hear any of it. I offered to go get my manager, whose decision the whole $1 for a side of mustard was, but he just kept berating me. I can't remember what he was saying anymore, but he was raising his voice at me, and I ended up just apologizing and walking away. A few minutes later, I was wiping down a table and I heard yelling and swearing behind me. I turned to find the same man yelling at me again. I remember saying, "I don't think swearing at me is going to solve this problem." And he said, "I'm not swearing at you," then continued to curse at me. I felt so attacked and shocked that I didn't move. Once he was done, he turned and walked out the front door. Then the table of people next to me all burst out laughing. I quickly walked into the kitchen and had a nice cry, all over $1. Story 70. I worked at a Disney restaurant. We had a customer who was there for 2 weeks and held us prisoner to her every whim and desire. She would give us public cast compliments on Twitter if we did something good. Disney rewards you for those. And if we didn't do something she wanted, she'd complain to the manager. At the end of her stay, she literally sent a list of good and bad workers to the resort. Our resort took them seriously, even though everyone on the good list were our lazy workers who would rather chat and talk than actually work, hence they got the compliments. So half loved her and half hated her. She'd want them to give her dog food, give her extra food, make her a Versus-specific milkshake, using ingredients we weren't supposed to put in the milkshake maker due to allergies, etc. I was a trainer for the 2 weeks they were there, so I was thankfully in the background and was untouched by her power. Anytime I showed my face, I was there to save the day, so it made me look good. But I did have to defend a few of my workers when the list came in, because they simply were new workers who didn't understand how everything worked. I'll never forget, she threatened to report one of my workers for not giving her enough gravy on the potatoes. We ran out. I pulled the worker to the side and told her to offer to bring fresh potatoes and gravy directly to her table the minute they came out of the kitchen. As the worker went to tell her this, the woman freaked out and demanded to know what we were gossiping about. Then became angrier because she assumed the potatoes we gave her weren't fresh. Guys, you know how busy Disney is? Our food is always fresh because there isn't time to let it sit. Sigh. Story 71. I've worked part-time at a very popular pizza chain in the Midwest for quite a few years, while home from college and during high school. While I've had a lot of awful customers, only about 2 come to mind, one of them being my neighbor of 18 years. I used to play with her kids when I was younger, but nonetheless, she comes in a bit early for the dinner rush, perhaps around 5 o'clock or so. This doesn't really matter as she came in and asked for a wait for a group of 15. Now, I conferred with my host because the restaurant was unusually full. I believe we already had large parties in there, and I told her it would be 50 minutes to an hour. She smiled and said, "That all?" I repeated myself and said yes and gave them menus to order ahead. She insisted they didn't need them and began her wait. Well, about half an hour later, she comes up screaming that they were told 15 minutes, and I told her no. Actually, I was the one who spoke with you, and we told you 50 minutes to an hour wait for your party of 15 people. She made a huge fuss and said that was absolutely not what I told her. Meanwhile, her family was looking embarrassed as they all knew I was their neighbor of almost 20 years. My coworker chimes in and says she was also up here with me and knew I had said it twice to her, but we would reevaluate her wait time to see if we could push something together. Now, that's almost never possible. We just say it to get them off our backs. Or start saying we're just waiting on one table to get up. So I also handed her menus and told her to order pizza ahead of time as it takes quite a while to cook. I was a bit flustered as this was literally my neighbor 2 houses away who often comments on my dad's Facebook posts and will say hi when she sees us outside. So I was a little worked up as she walked away from the desk and I asked my coworkers if I truly said the wrong time or what happened. And they all said no. And then I explained that she was my freaking neighbor. She clearly didn't recognize who I was, but after we had sat her party, early even, she came back and apologized, which thank God, because she was really rude. This was probably 2 years ago, so I don't remember all the details, but I'm still astounded that my neighbor, who has known me for so long, pulled such a Karen move on me. The other customer is a regular who comes in on weekdays during the late lunch hours around 1 to 3 p.m., and during that time, we only have like one person on seating/cash register, which was me. This lady is a nightmare. She comes in with her husband, and this lady wanders the restaurant and talks to everyone and anyone that works there for as long as possible until someone actually comes and saves you from her. My manager used to take a quick walk every once in a while when she knew this lady was here and just make sure I was able to do my job. My manager would come up and say, "Hey, sorry to interrupt, but I need you to do a special job for me," and I'd apologetically turn to the lady and say my goodbyes, have a great day, etc., and run away as fast as possible. One day, I'm caught working without my savior manager, and it's kind of busy, and this lady catches me at the front hostess desk and proceeds to talk to me for literally an hour about nothing and everything and sexism in the world, even though she was the one being sexist in the story. This lady is so crazy. She went on for a full hour watching me squirm and try to run away, and her husband even came up. Now, this guy doesn't even speak. He has no room to speak with this lady never ending her sentences. So the 3 of us are standing there. I'm not talking, just listening, smiling, feeling uncomfortable as she's telling me, "It's a man's world, honey. It's a man's world." Which, duh, I know. And finally, a glorious phone call comes in. I usually dread taking phone calls, but I had to get away from her before I lost my mind. So I cut in and said, "Oh, yeah, I gotta take this phone call. I apologize." And she says, "Yeah, no worries." I take the phone call and she stands there and talks to me through the entire phone call. The phone call is for a manager, which, praise God, lets me have an excuse to run and hide in the back of the restaurant, and I finally got away. As I made my hasty retreat, the server who had dealt with her the past 2 hours cackled and told me she never thought I was going to get out of that one. Story 72. I once had a woman come in to pick up a to-go order, an hour late, obviously under the influence of something. This wasn't the first time I dealt with someone under the influence while working, so I just continued to do my job, when I noticed something strange. The woman was holding herself weird, and there appeared to be something moving under her jacket. I was kind of weirded out by this point, and the woman must have noticed this, so she told me not to worry. It was just Bun. She then proceeded to pull out a giant pet rabbit from her jacket and set it on my to-go counter. I told her she couldn't do that and tried to get her to leave, but she just kept rambling on and there were no other employees around because it was close to closing time. While this rabbit is still hopping around my counter, I resolved to just get through the transaction as quickly as possible. The entire time she had been rambling about different things. When she stopped and asked if she could give me a hug, I told her no and continued with the transaction. But my no fell on deaf ears because the next thing I know, she's halfway across my counter and has me in her arms. I'm completely freaked out at this point, but finally she's paid and she has her food, so she takes her rabbit and leaves. I'm so relieved at this point I could have cried. And then she came back in and essentially shoved her rabbit into my arms, emotionally explaining that Bun also wanted to say goodbye. She leaves for real after that, and I just sit there looking around the empty restaurant with both myself and my counter covered in fur and wondering if someone had slipped something into my water bottle. To this day, that remains one of the most bizarre experiences of my life. Story 73. So this happened when I was 17, working as a host at a restaurant called Cheddar's. Weekends are always busy, as per usual, and I had a lot of parties on a wait. This lady walks, ignores my greeting, and rudely goes, "Table for 8." I take down her name and party number and tell her that will be a 30-minute wait and your full party has to be here when we call you. These rules are pretty common in most goddamn restaurants. She proceeds to turn around and counts the 7 people behind her and goes, "Since that was too hard for you to do." I just paused for a second and tell her she was still on a 30-minute wait. I stand in the lobby for a few minutes and the lady, who's clearly just trying to antagonize me at this point, comes up to me and claims I'm purposely making her wait longer and that I'm not capable of doing such a simple job. I'm pretty good at keeping my cool, but I was basically at my breaking point, so I very sternly tell her that it's a weekend, we're busy, and there are parties in front of her. I ended up going to the manager's office, borderline crying, and just explained everything that happened with this customer. And once the manager went out to speak with her, she flipped the script, as most Karens do, to try and make me look bad. Anyways, her whole little charade worked because they comped part of her meal for the trouble. I only worked there for another month before walking out mid-shift because of some other BS. Story 74. I got a double whammy that got my ass fired. The first group of customers wasn't even mine. It was shift change and the earlier server dumped them on me after they ordered appetizers. She told me they had just sat down, so I knew nothing about the appetizers. They couldn't even tell I was a different person, despite me literally telling them I was going to be their new server. They called the manager over to complain about the appetizers I didn't even know about, didn't even ask me where they were. So they get free appetizers. I apologize for the confusion and they order food. The one chick orders X, which is very similar to Y. X comes out and she's livid. She wanted Y. Blames me. Calls not only the store manager over, but the regional manager and anyone else higher up she could get her hands on. She made a huge deal of it. Loud so everyone could hear. I was in big trouble. Told if I effed up again, I was done. Lost my credibility as a trainer, which was an extra $1 an hour pay. Had to kiss their asses for the rest of their stay while they crap-talked me and took up space for potential tipping customers. I get a booth in the back. They're doing great. Food's coming out on time. Comes out right. My manager calls me over, asks why I'm ignoring my table. They've complained I'm not being attentive to them. Lacing into me, that's my job. Why are you effing up after that last table, blah blah blah. I go over to the table to check on what they need. Nothing. I go check on them like every 5 or so minutes, which is borderline annoying, but they're apparently needy people, except they never ask for a damn thing. No extra food, no refills, no napkins, no alcohol, no dessert, nothing. They never needed a damn thing. They just complained for no reason, just laughed at me every time I came up. At that point, I realized my section isn't being seated anymore. As soon as that table left, they said to count out my money. I knew what was happening right away, as it was way early in the evening and they stopped me from doing any side work you normally had to do your share of. Fired me and made me do the walk of shame out of the restaurant with everyone watching and whispering. I hated those people for a long, long time. I was blacklisted from server work in town. Couldn't find a job for months because I either had a bad reference or no reference, depending if I put down or not. It took years to recover from that. I still wish I knew why people were like that, especially the second group. Story 75. First week on my own at Chili's, LOL, and an entire middle school basketball tournament and their parents all came in and wanted to be sat together. 1.5 hours before we closed, I might add. They said they would have about 25 people. Excessive, but not impossible. Well, people just kept coming and coming, and it was just one other server and I working this party. The kids were all talking and yelling, not paying attention to us trying to take their orders. The parents were saying stuff like, "My kid's the one with the red and the ponytail. He'll have chicken strips and fries," when there are about 15 kids in red with ponytails. Of course, the food was coming out of the kitchen at all different times, and the kids had no idea what their parents had ordered for them, so it was a disaster. All the parents were getting pissed that the food was coming out at different times. They ended up complaining to our managers about us two servers, saying we were rude and lazy, but the managers stuck up for us and we weren't any trouble. After everything, 75 people had joined this party. They took up almost the whole restaurant, a previously closed section, I might add. Servers will know how frustrating that is, and we made maybe $50 between the two of us. Worst shift ever. Story 76. I'm a woman with multiple face piercings. Can be seen in my post history for reference. I was serving a gentleman that looked at me very disgustedly and said, piercings. Must be very limiting for relationships. I was 15. 2. I work on a very traditional food market that's been running for the past 3 generations down a family line. I'm not part of the family, I just work for them. During the whole panic buying pandemic, it was very busy at work. This one woman decided to take up my time whilst people were queuing to argue to me about the fact we don't accept card payments. It went like this. Me. Thank you. That will be $12.43. IDK the real amount, but it was something like that. Customer. Goes to hand me her card. Me. Oh, sorry, we don't accept card. However, there is a cash machine right there, and I'm happy to hold your stuff if you need to get money out. The cash machine really was right there. 15 seconds walk away. Customer. No, you accept card. Me. Sorry for the inconvenience, but we don't. Customer. But that's why I came here, because you accept card. Me. Sorry, you have us mistaken for another stall? We've never accepted card, ever. Customer. That's ridiculous. I know that you do. It's why I came here. You did the last time I came. Me. I'm sorry, but I don't know what else to say. We simply don't. Customer. Oh, don't be effing ridiculous, woman. I thought we were living in the goddamn 21st century. Proceeds to then get money out of her purse, which had plenty of cash in it anyway. Me. Stares across into my coworker's eyes. She understands my pain immediately. Her. And I won't be coming back. This is a disgrace. Luckily, my boss is the best and doesn't feed into that customer is always right bullcrap. I told her what happened because I was a bit shook up by how unnecessarily rude she was. My boss just said, "What a rude cow." Lucky I wasn't serving her or I would have told her to piss off. Definitely not the most outrageous of stories, but it ruined my morning because it was really busy. I'm paid €5 an hour, and usually customers are lovely. That being said, the amount of dogs I get to see because I work outside on a market is the best part of my job and makes things like this more bearable. Story 77. I work at McDonald's. The worst customer that I ever had to deal with was this one older man. He only came through one time that I can remember, but it was the worst experience I've ever had dealing with someone in the drive-thru. It was around 7:30 in the morning, and I was alone up front, running, making drinks, taking orders. I took his order, so I knew exactly what he said. He ordered a large fruit punch with a breakfast meal. We have an automatic beverage system, so there's no room for human error when it comes to the size of the drinks, unless someone puts the wrong cup size in the machine. I greet him with a smile, hand him his food, and his large fruit punch. The cup was marked large, and that's the largest cup we have in the store. This man proceeds to start trying to convince me that his drink isn't large, that I handed him a medium. However, the drink I gave him was 100%, without a shadow of a doubt, a large drink. He continued ranting to me about the size of his drink, even though I explained to him that that was our largest size, and suggested maybe he was thinking about our old plastic cups that appeared bigger, but assured him that they had the same amount of ounces total. This prompted him to yell at me that he didn't care about the outside of the cup. He cared about the inside. He started to pull away, still yelling at me, so I finally just shut the door on him. I had to excuse myself to cry because of how poorly he treated me, as if I was the reason that the cup was that size. Story 78. BOH here. Worked at a barbecue joint for a small time. Doing a weekend midday shift. Get an order in for a few things including a shrimp and grits, no onions. Okay, no biggie. Go out for my business. Food goes up. I turn my back and resume my work. Plate comes back. A0, they said no onions. Crap. Went into autopilot. My bad. I'll fix it. Brand new shrimp and grits. No onions. Plate goes up. I turn my back to get the mac and cheese started. Hey, Zero, sorry, I screwed up. Can I get this shrimp and grits again? The plate is returned in a different server's hands, chock full of sliced green onions that the expo threw on top. With a heavy sigh, I start another shrimp and grits, no onions. And this time, I watch the plate like a hawk as it goes out. Okay, that sucks, but they'll comp it. Whatever. Plate comes back. Hey Zero, sorry, but they said the grits are too salty. Can I get a clean one? Now, I'm a good cook. I taste everything I serve. Those grits were perfect, but sodium tolerances are different, so okay, sure, whatever. A fresh batch of shrimp and grits, no salt, no onions, sent out with eagle eyes. Finally, let's be done and move on. Plate comes back. By this point, the server is now visibly frustrated. Zero, now they're saying they don't like the marinade on the shrimp. Can we do it again with plain shrimp? I'm so sorry. I stare in disbelief for a moment, take a deep breath, and do it again. Shrimp and grits, plain shrimp, no salt, no onions, in the window, out the door. I'm shaking my head as I'm clearing up my station. There's nothing that could possibly top that, I say to myself. Plate comes back. Zero, they said it was bland. They want the fried chicken instead. Yeah, at that point, I'd probably go out there and say something to these customers. Clearly, they're just trolling. There's absolutely no way that anybody has the patience to stay at a restaurant after being dissatisfied with their order that many times. They're clearly just being jerk-offs, and it's not funny. Story 79. I thought this one lady at my first serving job was a myth until I had her at one of my tables. I would bring over her bread to greet her, as I do all the tables, and she would request plain butter instead of seasoned, and hot water for her tea and her purse and her silverware. By the time I came back, she would have finished the loaf and asked for another one. It was about 8 inches long and meant to feed 2 people before their food comes out. She would then proceed to peruse the menu, asking me about items and trying to buy a full Italian meal under $3. And every time I returned, she'd ask for another piece of bread. Occasionally, she would pull out a giant effing calculator, the kind with the paper feed that comes out the top, to calculate how much she'd be spending with tax. When she wanted more time to think, she would shoo me away and wave me off. Every time I would walk to another table, she would snap at me like a dog and ask another question, or request more water or bread. After about an hour of this, she would request 2 breads, hot water, and fresh butters to go, and would leave without paying for anything or tipping because everything she got was free. I told management to consider charging her, but the restaurant was just glad to have people inside, so they let her do it pretty often. Close runner-up was the woman who changed her baby on the table and rested the dirty diaper next to them on the menu as they ate. Story 80. This will inevitably be buried, but I gotta tell y'all about this lady I sat when I was a hostess. Before Corona, I worked at a popular Italian family-style restaurant where we'd bring people through the kitchen as we led them to the table. There's this table back there guests can reserve in advance to eat in the actual kitchen, right in front of the line cooks and stuff. So I'm doing my little tour for this group of 6 people. Among them is this little old white lady. I get to the kitchen table, so I say what I usually do. Here's the kitchen table, just give us a call ahead and you can reserve it for up to 5 people and eat back here, etc., etc. This woman, who'd been quiet as a mouse until then, looks me in the eyes and asks me, "Ooh, is this table for the help? You know, so they don't have to walk very far when they're hungry?" With the biggest smile, she laughed at herself like she didn't just spout racist nonsense for her whole family to hear. I laughed nervously and shocked as hell. I just go, no, I don't think so, and finished leading them back in silence. The rest of the family said nothing and acted normal. I was unsure if I even heard her say something so effed up, but there's no way I misheard that crap. Considering a good amount of the staff is black, I was horrified. People are awful. Story 81. I used to serve at a popular chain restaurant that would get a ton of weirdos. We had a lot of pasta dishes, and in the middle of dinner, we ran out of fettuccine noodles and didn't have enough for one of my tables, so I tell this older man the situation and offer penne or spaghetti instead, and he flipped crap and went on a long rant about how ridiculous it is and ended up walking out. I found a Google review later on about how unprofessional we are because we don't have enough fettuccine in the middle of a Saturday night dinner. A man came in once looking very unkempt early on a weekday morning and immediately orders a double rum and coke, finishes it in like 5 minutes, then orders another one along with a large pizza. After a couple of slices, gets another drink, so I brought a glass of water with it. Ends up wanting to pack the pizza and get the bill, which ended up being around $60. Once I bring it, he starts looking at his backpack for money, but doesn't have any, so I get my manager and he agrees to take the man's bag as collateral while he goes to grab his money. An hour goes by and naturally he doesn't come back. After another couple hours, we decide to get rid of his bag, which was super light, and turned out to just have a pack of condoms and a half bottle of 7-Up in it. We used to show UFC fights, and the one night some guy got really pissed about something and ended up flipping a table in the bar. Had to call the cops. Stopped showing the fights after that incident. Had a lady come in saying she was waiting on someone and ordered a glass of wine while she waited. Completely normal at first. We start chatting since I didn't have many tables, and she wouldn't stop saying that she's a professional chef and expects everything to be perfect. Mind you, it was a popular restaurant, but the food wasn't that great. After about an hour, no one shows up, so she orders a steak. Probably one of the worst things to order from a place that specializes in pizza and pasta, but whatever. And while she was ordering, she kept insisting how it has to be perfect because she's a professional chef. I told the guys who were working in the kitchen to make it as best as they can, because I really didn't want to deal with her making a scene, and of course she sent it back, although it was cooked just like she wanted, so we had to make her a new one. In the end, when I brought her the bill, the guy she was supposed to meet never showed up, and I highly doubt someone was supposed to in the first place. She tried to leave without paying, even though she ate about half of the messed up steak and the full new one. So my manager ended up making her pay, and she went straight to the bar after to drink more. We had tons of crazy entitled people come in. Those were just the highlights I could think of off the top of my head, and although it was kind of funny, I'm so happy I don't work there anymore. You know, that's a good point about going to a pizza joint and ordering a steak. I never understand. I mean, I guess if you're in like a group party setting and you're kind of going along with the group to a specific restaurant that has food that maybe you're not into, like if you hate seafood and you go to a seafood joint, okay, you know, chicken fingers, a burger, or something like that, it's appropriate to have that on the menu. But like if you're literally going to a pizza joint by yourself and ordering a steak, that, you know, you need to be checked out for something. That's just weird. Story 82. Obviously not the worst compared to some of the other stories I've seen on this post, but I wanted to share anyway. I was working fast food. I was on grill. This lady comes through and orders 20 doubles. I know we definitely don't have 40 full-size patties ready right now, so I go into panic and load up the grill all the way. It's a DSG, double-sided grill, so we have to wait once we put the meat on. Full-size patties take like 4 minutes to cook. The register person reads off this lady's total, which is like 100-something, and she flips out, saying something's wrong. The register lady clears it up, and apparently she meant to order 20 of our junior doubles. Quick clarification, the full-size double was called a double. The junior-size double is called double stack, so it was understandable confusion. So I have to wait for another 3-ish minutes for the grill to put up the full-size patties. Manager wanted me to not ruin $100 of meat to make a lady happy faster. Then drop down all the junior patties and wait another 3-ish minutes for the junior patties to cook. Junior patties take less time to cook than full-size patties. At the end of it all, I thought we handled the misinterpretation pretty well, but she was pissed we, quote, tried to make her pay $100 for her food. Manager came out and tried to explain the situation, but she wasn't having it and ended up just driving off without her food and said she's never coming back. So she basically just wasted like $150 worth of meat, caused a small scene in the drive-thru, and we had nothing to show for it. She freaking sucked. TLDR, lady comes through the drive-thru, orders $100 worth of burgers, freaks out as she meant to order the junior size equivalent of her order, gets pissed we didn't read her mind and tell the difference, and leaves us with $150 of soon-to-be useless meat.